Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 1 of our story. If you like this What If story and want to see part 2, let me know in the comments below. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Also, check the description for more great content and my playlist. This story was posted by 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴 on Wattpad. Now let's start. The forest air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, a world away from the concrete sprawl of 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴. Izuku Midoriya trudged behind his mother, 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴, his sneakers sinking slightly into the soft trail. The backpack slung over his shoulders felt heavier than it should, weighed down not just by clothes and snacks but by the words that still echoed in his mind. You cannot become a hero. All Might's voice, kind but firm, had carved a hollow space in his chest. He was 14, quirkless, and now, it seemed, dreamless. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴 had insisted on this trip, a week-long retreat to a quiet campground in the mountains, a chance to clear their heads. Izuku knew she was worried. She'd seen the light dim in his eyes after that rooftop conversation, noticed the way his hero notebooks gathered dust on his desk. So here they were, hiking through a forest so dense the sunlight barely touched the ground, her soft hums filling the silence as she led the way. Izuku tried to smile for her, but his heart wasn't in it. The world felt grayscale, like the vibrant colors of his childhood aspirations had bled out. The trail opened to a clearing where their campsite waited, a small patch of earth ringed by towering cedars, with a fire pit at its center. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴 set to work unpacking, her movements brisk but gentle, while Izuku wandered to the edge of the clearing, staring at the sky. Dusk was creeping in, painting the horizon in hues of amber and violet. He shoved his hands into his pockets, feeling the familiar sting of tears he refused to let fall. What now? He thought. If I can't be a hero, what's left? A sudden streak of light sliced across the sky, sharp and bright, like a blade cutting through the twilight. Izuku's breath caught. A meteor? No, it was too fast, too deliberate. It arced downward, a blazing comet trailing green fire, and before he could call for his mom, it plunged into the forest with a muffled thud that shook the ground beneath his feet. Birds scattered from the trees, their cries echoing in the sudden stillness. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴's voice trembled as she called out to him, her head snapping up from the tent she was assembling. She asked what had happened, and Izuku, already moving toward the tree line, replied that he didn't know. His heart pounded, not with fear but with curiosity, or perhaps the faint flicker of something he hadn't felt since All Might's words. He urged his mother to stay put as he ventured forward, weaving through the underbrush. The forest seemed to hum with energy, the air buzzing against his skin. He didn't know why he was running toward the unknown, only that he had to see it, to know what had fallen from the sky. The crash site wasn't far. He stumbled into a small crater, the earth scorched and smoking, trees bent outward as if pushed by an invisible force. At the center lay something impossible. A metallic pod, no bigger than a soccer ball, its surface glinting with an otherworldly sheen. Green light pulsed faintly from its core, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Izuku's mouth went dry. This wasn't a meteor. This was something else. He crept closer, his analytical mind kicking into gear despite the awe gripping him. The pod was smooth, unmarred by the impact, its surface etched with strange, angular symbols that glowed faintly. He reached out, hesitating, his fingers hovering inches from the metal. What if it's dangerous? He thought. But then, what if it's not? His hand brushed the surface, cool and slick, and with a soft hiss, the pod split open like a blooming flower. Inside was a device unlike anything Izuku had ever seen. It looked like a watch, but bulkier, with a wide face displaying a glowing green hourglass symbol. Its band was black with green accents, and it thrummed with a low, almost imperceptible vibration. Izuku's eyes widened. He'd seen enough hero tech to know this wasn't UA equipment or some pro's gadget. This was alien. He glanced back toward the campsite, half expecting 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴 to come crashing through the trees, but the forest was silent. His fingers twitched, drawn to the device. A small voice warned him not to touch it, but another, louder one, the one that had spent years scribbling hero analyses in notebooks, urged him on. He picked it up, the weight surprisingly light in his hands. The moment his skin made contact, the device moved. With a mechanical whir, the band snapped open and clamped around his left wrist, locking into place with a soft click. Izuku yelped, tugging at it, but it wouldn't budge. The face of the device lit up, the hourglass spinning, and a holographic interface flickered to life above it. Strange symbols scrolled past, too fast to read, before a voice, calm, synthetic, and distinctly not human, spoke directly into his mind. User DNA verified. Omnitrix activated. Calibration complete. Izuku whispered the name, his voice barely audible over the pounding of his heart. The hologram shifted, displaying a silhouette of a muscular, humanoid figure wreathed in flames. He turned the dial on the device instinctively, and the image changed, a sleek, insect-like creature with multiple limbs, then a hulking figure with rocky skin. Each twist of the dial brought a new form, each more bizarre than the last. His mind raced. This is a transformation device. It's like a quirk, but he stopped, his breath hitching. But it's not a quirk. It's something more. He pressed the dial, more out of curiosity than intent, and the world exploded into green light. When the light faded, Izuku wasn't Izuku anymore. He was taller, broader, his body encased in molten rock that glowed with veins of magma. Heat radiated from him, warming the air, and when he moved, the ground beneath his feet sizzled. He stumbled, catching himself on a tree that immediately caught fire under his touch. His voice was deeper, resonant, like it came from the heart of a volcano. He stared at his hands, massive, glowing, and utterly alien. Panic and exhilaration collided in his chest. He was something else, something powerful. He flexed his fingers, and a burst of flame shot out, singeing a nearby bush. He muttered to himself, trying to steady his breathing. This is real. This is happening. He turned the dial again, fumbling with unfamiliar hands, and pressed it. Another flash of green, and he was himself again, sprawled on the forest floor, the Omnitrix humming softly on his wrist. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽's voice cut through the haze, sharp with worry. She burst into the clearing, her eyes wide as she took in the smoldering crater and her son sitting in the dirt, clutching a strange device. She asked what had happened, if he was okay, and what was on his wrist. Izuku scrambled to his feet, his mind still reeling. He held up his wrist, the Omnitrix glinting in the fading light. He explained that he had found something called the Omnitrix, which allowed him to transform into various beings. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽's face paled, but her eyes flickered with something else, resolve. She stepped closer, her hands trembling as she reached for his wrist but stopped just short of touching the device. Izuku's voice was steady despite the storm in his chest as he acknowledged the situation. This was incredible, yet dangerous. They didn't know what it was or where it had come from. He felt a surge of hope, believing this could be his chance to become a hero. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽's expression softened, torn between fear and pride. She had seen that spark in his eyes before, the one that drove him to chase his dreams despite the world telling him no. She pulled him into a hug, whispering that they would figure it out together, but he needed to promise to be careful. He promised, returning her embrace. The Omnitrix pulsed against his wrist, a silent reminder of the power now bound to him. As the stars began to emerge above the forest, Izuku felt something shift inside him. All Might's words still stung, but they no longer felt like the end, they felt like a challenge. The week at the campsite passed in a blur of quiet moments and tentative hope. Izuku and 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 filled their days with hikes through the Emerald Forest, evenings by the crackling fire, and shared laughter over burnt marshmallows. The Omnitrix, a constant weight on Izuku's wrist, remained a silent promise, its green glow a beacon in the dark of his doubts. He hadn't dared touch it since that first fiery transformation, the memory of molten rock and searing heat still vivid. Instead, he poured his energy into his notebook, scribbling theories about the device's origins, sketching the alien he had become, and cataloging the holographic forms that flickered across its interface. Each page was a lifeline, anchoring him to the impossible reality that he now carried a piece of the cosmos. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 watched him closely, her smiles tinged with worry. She didn't push him to talk about the Omnitrix, but her glances at his wrist spoke volumes. Izuku knew she was torn, proud of his resilience, terrified of what this unknown power might mean. He wanted to reassure her, to promise he'd be careful, but curiosity gnawed at him like a persistent itch. The Omnitrix was a puzzle, and he had never been good at leaving puzzles unsolved. On the final night of their trip, with the stars blazing above the clearing, Izuku sat cross-legged by the fire, his notebook open on his lap. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 was inside the tent, humming softly as she packed for their return to 𝗧𝗧𝗟𝗧 tomorrow. The Omnitrix hummed too, its faint vibration syncing with his pulse. He flipped to a new page, his pencil hovering, contemplating the device and its origins. The questions burned brighter than the campfire. He decided to try one more transformation, something small and safe. His fingers brushed the dial, and the interface sprang to life with a soft chime. The hologram cycled through forms before settling on a tiny, humanoid silhouette with an oversized head and bulbous eyes. It looked harmless, perfect. Izuku took a deep breath, his heart racing with a mix of fear and exhilaration. He pressed the dial. The world dissolved into a surge of green light, and his body unraveled. When the light faded, he was no longer human. He stood barely 6 inches tall, his skin a mottled gray, smooth and cool like polished stone. His head felt heavy, disproportionately large, and his massive, black eyes took in the world with dizzying detail. Every blade of grass was a towering spire, and every ember in the fire was a miniature sun. His fingers twitched with newfound precision. He was a creature of intellect, his mind buzzing with ideas that hadn't existed moments ago. He stumbled forward, his tiny legs wobbling on the uneven ground, marveling at how effortlessly he moved. The campsite appeared vastly different from this new perspective. His notebook, fallen to the ground, was a massive tome. He scampered toward it, excitement coursing through him. 𝗮𝐼𝐻's voice rang out, sharp with alarm, as she emerged from the tent, scanning the clearing. She dropped to her knees, her hands hovering as if afraid to touch him. She was shocked to see the diminutive alien standing on his own notebook. Izuku called out, waving his tiny arms, his voice small but filled with enthusiasm. He explained that he had wanted to try another transformation. This one felt different, smaller, but he felt smarter, as if his brain was on overdrive. He gestured at the Omnitrix, now a tiny band on his wrist, excitedly sharing that he believed this form was meant for thinking, not fighting. He could analyze the Omnitrix better like this. 𝗮𝐼𝐻's expression wavered between awe and concern. She reminded him that he had promised to be careful, expressing her worry about his safety. Izuku reassured her, explaining how fine he felt and how this form allowed him to see patterns and connections he couldn't before. 𝗮𝐻 sighed, rubbing her temples, and asked if he could change back. He promised to do so soon but was already distracted, hopping off the notebook and scurrying toward the Omnitrix's interface. He tapped the dial, his tiny fingers moving with precision. The hologram flickered, displaying a stream of data, symbols, numbers, and diagrams that made no sense to his human mind but now clicked into place like pieces of a grand machine. He marveled at the realization that the Omnitrix was not just a transformation device. It was a database, a genetic archive storing DNA from countless species. His excitement grew as he spun to face 𝗮𝐻, his eyes wide with wonder. He explained that this device could change everything, emphasizing that it was not just about strength but understanding, adapting, and solving problems no one else could. 𝗮𝐻's frown softened as she searched his tiny face, recognizing the spark of determination in his voice. She hadn't heard it in a while, and it reminded her of the hope she had for him. Izuku climbed onto a nearby rock, bringing himself closer to her eye level, ready to embrace the challenges ahead. 𝗮𝐻 expressed her fears, but she also recognized the significance of the Omnitrix for Izuku. It felt as if it was meant for him, offering a chance to become what he had always dreamed of. She gently brushed his tiny shoulder, her voice filled with concern as she reminded him of her longing for his safety, regardless of his aspirations to be a hero. Izuku reassured her, his voice steady despite its high pitch, affirming that he would remain himself no matter what transformations he underwent. He was determined to navigate this new reality for both of them. She smiled, though her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, and noted his stubbornness, a trait he shared with his father. Izuku grinned, feeling a surge of confidence as he mentioned his new form, gray matter, a species known for its intelligence and problem-solving abilities. He explained the Omnitrix-a's timer, which would revert him to his original form after about 10 minutes to prevent any potential issues. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽, amused despite her worry, teased him about becoming a mad scientist. Izuku laughed, his voice a high-pitched chirp, and mused about the possibilities of building something incredible in this form. However, 𝐒𝐮𝐽 reminded him to take things one step at a time, urging him not to rush into solving the mysteries of the universe that night. With a sigh, Izuku acknowledged her wisdom, feeling the weight of his thoughts. 𝐒𝐮𝐽 encouraged him to change back, wanting to embrace her son without the fear of accidentally harming him. He complied, pressing the Omnitrix-a's dial, and in a flash of green light he returned to his human form, sprawled on the grass with his notebook clutched to his chest. He sat up, sheepishly assuring her that he was fine. 𝐒𝐮𝐽 enveloped him in a tight hug, her breath catching as she expressed her concern. He apologized for the scare, but he felt a surge of determination, believing this was just the beginning of his journey to become a hero. She cupped his face, affirming her faith in him and reminding him that he wouldn't have to face this alone. They would figure out the Omnitrix together, and Izuku's heart swelled with gratitude. As they sat by the fire, the stars shone brightly above, and the night buzzed with potential. The Omnitrix hummed softly, a reminder that Izuku's world had expanded infinitely, and he was eager to explore every facet of it. Upon returning to his room in 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽, Izuku was greeted by the familiar sounds of the city. The week spent in the mountains felt surreal, with the Omnitrix on his wrist serving as the only tangible proof of his experiences. His room remained unchanged, filled with hero posters and cluttered with notebooks, yet everything felt different, as if the alien device had subtly altered his perspective. He dropped his backpack and sank into his chair, his gaze fixed on the Omnitrix. Its green glow illuminated his desk as he turned the dial, revealing silhouettes of alien forms, each one a mystery and a challenge. The fiery figure of Heat Blast flashed past, followed by gray matter, whose intellectual clarity still resonated in his mind. With 10 forms available, each possessing unique strengths, his curiosity ignited, urging him to explore further. Downstairs, the sounds of cooking and 𝐒𝐮𝐽's voice mingled with the aroma of miso soup. She was preparing dinner, a comforting routine to ease their transition back into city life. Izuku glanced at his door, then back at the Omnitrix, feeling the urge to try another transformation. He spotted a hulking canine-like figure that exuded primal energy, distinct from the cerebral gray matter or the fiery heat blast. His heart raced at the thought of this new form. He called out to his mother, bounding downstairs with excitement. 𝐒𝐮𝐽, busy at the stove, looked up with a warm smile, though her eyes reflected concern. She informed him that dinner was almost ready and mentioned the simple meal she had prepared, which included his favorite fish cakes. Izuku, filled with nervous energy, held up his wrist, the Omnitrix glinting in the kitchen light. He expressed his longing to try another transformation, assuring her that he would be careful and that he would do it in his room. 𝐒𝐮𝐽's smile faltered as she hesitated, reminding him of their recent return home and the unknowns surrounding the Omnitrix. She expressed her worries about potential mishaps. He stepped closer, his green eyes earnest as he reassured her that he was beginning to understand the device. He explained its safety protocols and promised to change back immediately if anything felt off. After a moment of contemplation, 𝐒𝐮𝐽 relented, agreeing to accompany him to see the transformation for herself. They climbed the stairs together, 𝐒𝐮𝐽's apprehension evident in her footsteps. In his room, Izuku cleared a space, preparing for the transformation. He selected the canine-like silhouette on the Omnitrix and glanced at 𝐒𝐮𝐽, who stood by the doorframe, her expression a mix of concern and curiosity. With a deep breath, he pressed the dial, and green light enveloped him, transforming his body as he embraced the new form. His limbs thickened, muscles coiling beneath orange, leathery skin, ready for whatever adventures lay ahead. His face transformed into a fierce muzzle, teeth sharp and gleaming, while his eyes vanished, replaced by slits that pulsed with heightened senses. Claws emerged from his hands, gripping the floorboards, and a powerful tail lashed behind him. When the light faded, Izuku was gone, replaced by a beast that filled the room with raw, animalistic energy. His fur bristled, his breath a low growl, and the Omnitrix-a's symbol glowed on his shoulder, a stark contrast to his primal form. 𝐼𝐸𝐸 gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, expressing her shock at the transformation. She stepped forward, her voice trembling but steady, asking if he could hear her and to nod if he understood. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐬𝐚 tilted his head, the slits on his face quivering as he processed her voice through heightened senses. He dipped his muzzle in a slow nod, his movements deliberate despite the feral energy radiating from him. 𝐼𝐸𝐸𝐸 exhaled shakily, relieved that he was still in there, but noted how fierce he looked, like something out of a nightmare. She inquired if he could talk, but 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐬𝐚 opened his jaws, producing a guttural rumble without forming words. Frustrated, he shook his head, his claws flexing against the floor. 𝐼𝐸𝐸𝐸's eyes widened at the realization that he couldn't talk. She urged him to stay calm and asked if he could move around to show her what this form could do. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐬𝐚 crouched, muscles rippling, and sprang onto the bed with surprising agility, the frame creaking under his weight. His head swiveled, the slits on his face glowing faintly as he mapped the room through scent and sound. He leaped to the floor, landing silently, and prowled toward the window, his tail brushing against the wall. Every movement was fluid and predatory, a stark contrast to the analytical precision of gray matter or the explosive power of heat blast. 𝐼𝐸𝐸𝐸 expressed her awe at his speed and strength, cautioning him about scratching the floor with his claws. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐬𝐚 froze, tilting his head as if he understood her concern. He stepped back, moving more cautiously, and sat on his haunches, the Omnitrix symbol pulsing steadily. 𝐼𝐸𝐸𝐸 approached, her hands outstretched but hesitant. She admitted her uncertainty about how to feel, acknowledging that he looked capable of taking on a bear, yet it was hard to see him like this without hearing his voice. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐬𝐚 whined softly, nudging her hand with his muzzle in a gentle gesture that unmistakably reminded her of Izuku. 𝐼𝐸𝐸𝐸's expression softened as she stroked his fur, reassuring him that he was still her boy, no matter his form. She sat on the bed, her eyes never leaving him, contemplating the Omnitrix and what it meant for both of them. She expressed her fears and pride, urging him to keep thinking and being himself, regardless of the form he took. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐬𝐚 let out a soft huff, his tail thumping against the floor, prompting 𝐼𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸 to smile and brush a tear from her cheek. She remarked that she missed his face and hoped he would change back soon. As if on cue, the Omnitrix beeped, its green light flashing. In a burst of radiance, 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐬𝐚 dissolved, and Izuku reappeared, sprawled on the floor, his chest heaving. He looked up at 𝐼𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸, exhilaration shining in his eyes as he described the experience of sensing everything around him in a way he had never imagined. 𝐼𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸 pulled him into a hug, her laughter shaky as she acknowledged that he was going to drive her crazy. She began to believe that the Omnitrix might indeed make him a hero. Izuku grinned, feeling the warmth of the Omnitrix against his wrist, and declared his determination to figure everything out and make her proud. 𝐼𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸 ruffled his hair, affirming that he already made her proud, and urged him to come downstairs for dinner, playfully stating that she wouldn't be feeding any more aliens that night. As they headed to the kitchen, the glow of the Omnitrix lingered in Izuku's mind, a reminder that his journey was just beginning and that the beast within was only one piece of the puzzle. The bell signaling the end of the school day echoed through Aldra Junior High, sending students spilling into the halls. Izuku lingered at his desk, his notebook open to a page filled with meticulous sketches of the Omnitrix-a's alien forms. His pencil danced across the paper, detailing the sensory slits of 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐬𝐚 and the fiery veins of heat blast, each slide a tether to the extraordinary secret he carried. The classroom, bathed in the golden light of late afternoon, felt like a sanctuary, until it wasn't. A sharp voice broke through his focus, calling out to him. Izuku looked up to see Tsubasa and Kaneko, Katsuki Bakugo's ever-present lackeys, leaning against the doorway with mocking expressions. Tsubasa's smirk was sharp, and Kaneko's crossed arms radiated menace as they taunted him about his sketches. Izuku tightened his grip on his pencil, feeling his heart race. He had faced their taunts before, but the Omnitrix on his wrist changed everything. It was a quiet power, a hidden defiance, yet he hesitated, deciding not to engage in the confrontation. He shoved his notebook into his bag and stated that he was just studying, asking them to leave him alone. Kaneko stepped closer, his shadow looming over Izuku's desk, questioning what he was studying and mocking his aspirations of becoming a hero without a quirk. Tsubasa laughed as he snatched Izuku's bag from the desk, dumping its contents onto the floor, revealing his sketches. Izuku lunged to reclaim his notebook, but Kaneko shoved him against the desk, pinning him down. The classroom was empty now, and Izuku's eyes darted to his exposed secrets. Anger flared within him, unfamiliar yet powerful. He shouted for them to give it back and, surprising them with his ferocity, twisted free from Kaneko's grip to grab his notebook. For a moment, shock froze the bullies. Deku, the quirkless nobody, was fighting back. Then their expressions hardened, and Kaneko growled a threat, cracking his knuckles as he suggested they teach him a lesson. Izuku didn't wait for them to make a move. He bolted, clutching his bag as he sprinted through the classroom door and into the hall. Their footsteps pounded behind him, their shouts echoing off the lockers. The school was a maze of empty corridors, and Izuku's sneakers squeaked as he rounded corners, his mind racing faster than his legs. He knew he couldn't fight them as himself, but the thought of using the Omnitrix flashed through his mind. It was reckless and dangerous, but it was his only chance. He burst through the exit into the schoolyard, the late afternoon sun blinding. The streets beyond were quiet, the city settling into its evening rhythm. Izuku veered toward an alley across from the school, its narrow mouth promising cover. His pursuers were close. He could hear their taunts, feel the heat of their pursuit. Tsubasa's voice rang out, filled with glee as he called out to him. The alley was a shadowed canyon, littered with crates and overflowing bins. Izuku ducked behind a dumpster, his breath ragged. His fingers found the Omnitrix, its familiar hum a lifeline. He whispered for it to help him, twisting the dial blindly. The holographic interface flared, cycling through silhouettes. He didn't have time to choose or think. He slammed the dial down, and green light consumed him. His body unraveled in a way that was both alien and exhilarating. His flesh dissolved into a spectral mist, and his vision shifted, the world tinting violet as if viewed through a ghostly lens. When the light faded, Izuku was no longer human. He had transformed into a wraith, his form a translucent shroud of gray and black, with a single glowing eye peering from a skull-like face. Chains of ethereal energy coiled around his limbs, and his voice, when he tried to speak, was a hollow whisper swallowed by the air. He was Ghost Freak, a creature of shadow and silence, untethered from the physical world. Tsubasa and Kaneko skidded into the alley, searching for him. They called out, demanding he show himself. Inko's warnings echoed in Izuku's mind, but the thrill of this new form drowned them out. He drifted upward, weightless, phasing through the dumpster as if it were air. Hovering above the bullies, invisible in the dim light, he felt a surge of confidence replace his fear. Kaneko kicked a crate in frustration, splintering it. Izuku focused, willing his body to move. He glided forward, his spectral form rippling like smoke, and passed through Kaneko's shoulder. The bully yelped, stumbling back, his eyes wide. Tsubasa, still skeptical, demanded to know what was happening. Izuku grinned, darting forward again, brushing through Tsubasa's arm. The bully flinched, dropping Izuku's crumpled notebook page, his bravado crumbling. As the bullies grew more anxious, Izuku's confidence soared. He phased through the alley wall, emerging behind them, and let out a low, eerie mm that reverberated off the bricks. Both bullies froze, their faces paling. Tsubasa whispered nervously, while Kaneko tried to reassure him, though his hands were shaking. They decided to check the other side of the alley, and Izuku followed, silent and unseen, blending with the shadows. He reached out, his clawed fingers grazing Kaneko's back. The bully spun around, swinging wildly in panic. Izuku moved again, phasing through the ground and rising behind Tsubasa. He let his chains rattle, the sound sharp and unnatural. Tsubasa screamed, stumbling into Kaneko, who caught him but looked ready to flee. They both realized this wasn't worth it and decided to leave, scrambling out of the alley, their footsteps fading into the street. Izuku waited, his ghostly form hovering until he was sure they were gone. The Omnitrix beeped, its timer ticking down, and in a flash of green, he was human again, sprawled on the cold pavement, his heart pounding with adrenaline. He scooped up his notebook page, smoothing it out with trembling hands. The experience had been incredible, and the power of Ghost Freak, intangibility, invisibility, the ability to instill fear, was unlike anything he'd imagined. He glanced at the Omnitrix, its glow steady and reassuring, feeling a sense of excitement. The walk home was quiet, the city's hum a soothing contrast to the alley's tension. 𝐮𝐸𝐸 was waiting at the door, her face lighting up when she saw him. She expressed her concern about him being late. Izuku reassured her that everything was fine, slipping inside and kicking off his shoes. He didn't mention the bullies or Ghost Freak, not yet. But as he sat at the dinner table, the Omnitrix warm against his wrist, he felt a shift within himself. He wasn't just Deku anymore, he was something more, someone who could stand up even in the shadows. 𝐮𝐸𝐸 set a steaming plate of katsu curry before him, encouraging him to eat and share about his day. Izuku laughed, feeling lighter than he had in weeks. He assured her there were no aliens, his eyes gleaming with secrets. The Omnitrix pulsed softly, reminding him that tomorrow held new challenges and new chances to prove himself. The dawn broke over Dagoba Municipal Beach Park, painting the sky in hues of rose and gold, but the shoreline below was a graveyard of refuse. Piles of rusted appliances, shattered glass, and discarded tires choked the sand, a testament to years of neglect. Izuku Midoriya stood at the edge of the mess, his breath visible in the chilly morning air, the Omnitrix gleaming on his wrist. With 10 months until the UA entrance exam looming ahead, he knew he had to prepare. All Might's words still stung, but the Omnitrix was his defiance, a cosmic gift that whispered of possibilities. He'd chosen this beach as his proving ground, a place to sculpt his body, sharpen his mind, and instill the alien powers now at his command. No one would help him here, just him, the trash, and the 10 aliens within the Omnitrix. Heat Blast, For Arms, Diamond Head, Stinkfly, Wild Mutt, Ghost Freak, XLR8, Ripjaws, Gray Matter, and Upgrade. Izuku adjusted his gloves, his notebook tucked into his backpack alongside a water bottle. He scanned the debris, determined to begin. He twisted the Omnitrix's dial, the interface flaring with the silhouette of 4 arms. He pressed the dial and green light enveloped him. His muscles swelled, his frame expanding into a towering, 4-armed behemoth with crimson skin and unyielding strength. When the light faded, he transformed into a Tetramand, his 4 fists clenched with determination. 4 arms declared that the beach was his. The first month was challenging. Izuku spent his mornings clearing trash as 4 arms, his 4 hands making quick work of heavy loads, car engines, broken furniture, and even a half-sunken boat. He encouraged himself to push harder, sweat dripping despite the alien's endurance. In the afternoons, he became Diamond Head, whose crystalline form sliced through tangled nets and shattered glass with precision. He reminded himself to focus, knowing that every piece counted. Evenings were dedicated to studying, hunched over textbooks in his room, equations and hero laws blurring together under the glow of his desk lamp. 𝐮𝐸𝐸 ensured he ate well, protein-packed bento boxes, vegetable stir-fries, and nutrient-rich smoothies, but she left the training to him, her trust a quiet pillar of support. She urged him to eat every bite, knowing he was burning energy with all his training. He assured her he was okay, his smile tired but genuine. By the 3rd month, the beach was transforming, patches of sand re-emerging like forgotten treasures. Izuku experimented with more aliens, testing their limits. As XR8, a speedster, he zipped across the shore, collecting scattered debris in a blur of blue and black, pushing himself to be faster. Stinkfly's insectoid wings carried him over piles too treacherous to navigate on foot, his corrosive slime dissolving plastic into manageable clumps. He laughed, hovering above the mess. One evening, 𝐮𝐸𝐸 caught him returning home, his clothes dusted with sand. She expressed her concern, noting that people were starting to notice the cleaner beach. Izuku felt a flush of pride, scratching his neck as he admitted he was just trying to make a difference. She reassured him that he already was, handing him a plate of chicken katsu, reminding him to rest because heroes need sleep too. Month 5 brought a breakthrough. As 𝗧𝗧𝗟𝗘, Izuku dove into the shallow waves, retrieving sunken debris, a bicycle frame, a tangle of fishing line, and even a rusted anchor. He reveled in his element, his webbed claws gripping the ocean floor. On land, 𝗬𝗏𝗼𝗬𝗏𝗏's keen senses tracked buried trash, and Izuku encouraged himself to keep going, despite his aching body. By the 6th month, the beach was unrecognizable. The sand gleamed under the sun, free of debris, a canvas of possibility. Izuku stood at its center, breathless as he surveyed his work. He realized that the exam was still 4 months away, and mastery of the Omnitrix required more than physical strength. He needed strategy, control, and finesse. He decided to switch things up, dialing the Omnitrix to gray matter. The tiny Galvan's intellect surged through him, and he analyzed his training, knowing the exam would test combat, rescue, and problem-solving. He spent hours devising tactics, combining forms for optimal effectiveness. Inko noticed the shift in his focus and acknowledged that he was preparing for something bigger. Izuku nodded, his eyes bright with determination, explaining that he was getting ready for UA's entrance exam. He was determined to show them he could be a hero, and the Omnitrix was his chance. She encouraged him to make it count while reminding him not to lose himself in it. The final months were intense. As heat blast, Izuku ignited controlled fires to burn organic waste, his flames dancing with precision. As upgrade, he merged with abandoned machines, transforming a rusted bulldozer into a sleek tool for smoothing the beach. Ghost Freak's intangibility allowed him to scout hidden corners, ensuring no trash remained. His studies never faltered. Late nights blurred into early mornings, his desk cluttered with notes on hero ethics, physics, and combat strategy. He resolved to outthink and outwork his opponents, fueled by Inko's meals, which she playfully reminded him were for 10 aliens, not just one boy. On the eve of the exam, Izuku stood on the pristine beach, the Omnitrix glowing softly. He cycled through the 10 silhouettes, each representing a piece of his journey: Heat Blast's fire, Forearm's strength, Diamond Head's resilience, Stinkfly's flight, 𝗬𝗏𝗼𝗬𝗏's instincts, Ghost Freak's stealth, XLR8's speed, 𝗧𝗧𝗟𝗘's aquatic prowess, Gray Matter's intellect, and Upgrade's versatility. He felt ready, his voice steady as he prepared for the challenge ahead. Inko called from their apartment, reminding him that dinner was ready and to not stay out too late. He responded, his eyes on the stars, feeling the Omnitrix pulse with potential. He was no longer quirkless. He was a hero in the making, forged in sweat, sand, and cosmic power. The towering facade of UA High loomed before Izuku Midoriya, its glass spires glinting in the morning sun like a beacon of dreams. The air buzzed with the chatter of examinees, a mix of bravado and nerves. Izuku stood alone at the edge of the courtyard, his heart racing. The Omnitrix, snug on his wrist, pulsed faintly, a reminder of the 10 alien forms that had reshaped his world over the past 10 months. His training at Dagobah Beach, clearing mountains of trash, honing his body, and mastering the Omnitrix's powers, had led to this moment. The UA entrance exam was his crucible, his chance to prove he could be a hero, quirk or no quirk. He adjusted his backpack, fingers brushing the worn cover of his hero notebook inside. He reassured himself that he could do this, taking a deep breath. The crowd of aspiring heroes surged around him, their quirks sparking and shimmering, flashes of light, bursts of wind, a boy with vines coiling from his fingertips. Izuku's analytical mind cataloged their abilities, but his focus snapped back as a familiar voice cut through the noise. Katsuki Bakugo approached, his expression filled with disdain, and the crowd parted instinctively, sensing the tension. He taunted Izuku, challenging him as he prepared to face the exam. Izuku felt the weight of Bakugo's glare as he stood his ground. Despite the tension in his chest, he remained steady and focused. He was not there to entertain doubts, he was there to compete. Bakugo's laughter rang out, sharp and mocking, as he dismissed Izuku's determination. He called him a mere pebble beneath his boot, warning him that stepping into the exam hall would only lead to embarrassment for both Izuku and his peers. Izuku clenched his fists, the Omnitrix humming softly as if encouraging him. He declared his intention to take the exam and pass, refusing to back down. Bakuga's eyes narrowed, a dangerous glint sparking within them. He threatened Izuku, suggesting that he would make him regret his decision to stand up to him. Memories of past taunts and bruises flashed through Izuku's mind, but he was no longer the same boy. The Omnitrix had granted him power, and his experiences had given him resolve. He told Bakugo that he was done running and that he would go into the exam hall, undeterred by the other boys' scorn. Bakugo's smirk turned icy, but he stepped back, crackling with energy, and told Izuku to crash and burn, promising to watch his failure. Izuku stood still, his breath shallow but his determination unshaken. He closed his eyes, focusing on the steady pulse of the Omnitrix, grounding himself. He reminded himself that he had trained for this moment and was ready. With each step toward the towering doors of UA, he felt the weight of his journey, but he crossed the threshold into the hallowed halls with newfound purpose. Inside, the written exam awaited. Izuku settled into a desk in a vast room filled with the sounds of pencils scratching and papers rustling. The questions challenged him, covering hero ethics, physics, and tactical analysis. Yet, his mind, sharpened by months of training as gray matter, navigated through them with ease. He answered each question with clarity, his pencil moving swiftly across the answer sheet. By the time the proctor called for pencils down, Izuku's confidence burned quietly within him. Next, the examinees were ushered into an auditorium, a grand space with tiered seats and a brightly lit stage. Izuku found a spot near the back, scanning the faces around him, some anxious, others brimming with confidence. The Omnitrix felt heavier now, a secret he held close. He wondered how his alien forms would perform in the practical exam. Suddenly, Present Mike burst onto the stage, his spiky blonde hair and booming voice commanding attention. He welcomed the future heroes, announcing that they had made it through the written test and were now ready to demonstrate their abilities. He introduced himself as the host for the UA entrance exam and laid out the rules for the practical. The crowd leaned in, excitement palpable in the air. Izuku's heart raced as he listened intently. Present Mike explained that the practical exam would test their combat, rescue, and strategic skills. They would be dropped into a mock city filled with robotic enemies, each worth points based on difficulty. The challenge was clear: take down the bots, earn points, and showcase their hero spirit. Murmurs of anticipation filled the auditorium, and Izuku's mind began to race with strategies. He considered his options: Heat Blast for ranged attacks, Forearms for strength, XLR8 for speed. He had to be ready. Present Mike raised a finger dramatically, announcing a twist. They would also encounter a 0-point bot, a massive creature designed to test their instincts under pressure. While it wouldn't earn them points, it was an opportunity to shine. The room buzzed with mixed reactions, some students excited while others felt the weight of the challenge. Present Mike clapped his hands, energizing the crowd. He explained that they would be split into groups and assigned to different testing sites. No teamwork was required, but they needed to use their wits and courage to succeed. Questions were welcomed, and when a girl asked about limits on quirks, Present Mike encouraged them to use their abilities to the fullest, as long as they did not endanger others. As the excitement built, Izuku felt his own resolve solidify. He had 10 aliens and 10 strategies at his disposal. He just needed to stay calm and make the right choices. With a final rallying cry, Present Mike urged them to prepare for their assigned sites. The auditorium erupted in cheers, and Izuku joined in, his voice lost in the chorus but his determination unwavering. The Omnitrix hummed at his wrist, a silent partner in his quest. The doubts and challenges he faced were now behind him. He was ready to step into his future. The mock city sprawled before Izuku Midoriya, a maze of concrete towers and steel structures beneath a cloudy sky. The practical phase of the UA entrance exam was about to begin, and the air buzzed with anticipation as examinees gathered at the gates of testing Site B. Izuku adjusted his wristband, the familiar weight of the Omnitrix grounding him amidst the chaos of nervous chatter and flexing quirks. His green eyes scanned the crowd, his mind sharp from months of training and the intellectual boost he had gained. He was ready to prove he belonged, ready to wield the 10 aliens within his grasp. Heat Blast for arms, Diamond Head, Stinkfly, Wild Mutt, Ghost Freak, XLR8, Ripjaws, Gray Matter, and Upgrade. His gaze caught on a girl a few paces away, her brown hair bobbing as she shifted nervously, her cheeks flushed. She clutched her hands together, her eyes darting to the towering gates, and something about her anxious posture tugged at Izuku's heart. She seemed scared, and his instinct to help surged. He took a step toward her, wanting to check on her, but a stern voice interrupted him. "Stop right there." A tall examinee with glasses and a rigid posture strode forward, his hand raised like a traffic cop. "You're distracting others with your fidgeting. This is a serious exam, and we must all maintain focus." Izuku blinked, caught off guard but unflinching. He calmly stated that he wasn't fidgeting, just checking on someone who looked nervous. "No excuses," the bespectacled boy snapped, adjusting his glasses sharply. "This is UA High, not a playground. If you can't conduct yourself properly, you have no business here." Izuku's jaw tightened, but he held his ground, his eyes steady. He was there to be a hero, just like the other examinee. Helping someone didn't make him less serious. He glanced at the brown-haired girl, hoping to catch her eye, but she was staring at the ground, her shoulders hunched. Before he could say more, a deafening clang echoed as the gates swung open, Present Mic's voice booming over the speakers. "Go, go, go!" Present Mike shouted, his enthusiasm electric. "No countdowns here, examinees. Show us what you've got." The crowd surged forward, a tidal wave of quirks and ambition, but the glasses-wearing boy shot Izuku a final glare, claiming he was already failing and ordering him to stay out of the way. Izuku ignored him, focusing as he joined the rush. With no countdowns, he had time to think. He wove through the mock city streets, his sneakers pounding the pavement, analyzing the terrain. The villain bots, robotic enemies worth 1, 2, or 3 points, clanked into view, their red optics glowing. Izuku didn't activate the Omnitrix yet, he wanted to prove he could hold his own without it. Spotting a rusted metal pole leaning against a wall, he grabbed it, twirling it with practiced ease from his Dagoba beach training. He charged at a one-pointer bot, ducking as its single arm swung. The pole arced to strike its joint, metal screeching as it collapsed in a shower of sparks. One down. A two-pointer loomed next, its dual cannons firing RBB projectiles. Izuku rolled behind a crate, then vaulted forward, jamming the pole into its optic sensor. The bot sputtered and toppled with a crash. 2 points. Adrenaline surged as he moved through the city, taking down another one-pointer and a second two-pointer, his muscles burning but his resolve unbreakable. He was racking up points, but his eyes kept drifting to the brown-haired girl, who was struggling nearby, dodging a one-pointer's clumsy swipe. She was holding her own, but she was scared. Before he could act, the ground shook, a mechanical roar splitting the air. The zero-pointer emerged, a colossal bot towering over the mock city, its treads crushing pavement, its arms swinging like wrecking ball. Examinees screamed and scattered, but the brown-haired girl froze, her eyes wide as the bot's shadow engulfed her. A chunk of debris fell, pinning her leg, and she cried out, panic seizing her. Izuku dropped the pole and reached for the Omnitrix, the dial clicking under his fingers. XR8, you're up. He slammed the faceplate, and green light consumed him. His body streamlined, legs elongating into sleek, powerful limbs, his face sharpening into a velociraptor-like snout with a black visor. Blue and black scales covered his skin, and a spiked tail balanced his form. When the light faded, he was 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐸𝐿, a 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐿 built for speed, his clawed feet sparking against the ground. Present Mic's voice crackled from a distant speaker, marveling at XLR8's speed. He blurred forward, the world slowing to a crawl as his velocity warped time. He reached the girl in a heartbeat, scooping her up with ease, her startled gasp barely registering. He zipped through the city, dodging falling debris, and set her down behind a collapsed wall, safe from the zero-pointer's rampage. "Are you okay?" he asked, his visor glinting. She nodded, her blush deepening, thanking him for saving her. Stay here, 𝗧𝗧𝗟𝗘 instructed, already turning back toward the zero-pointer, which was swinging its massive arm toward a cluster of examinees. It wasn't worth points, but it was a threat. He couldn't let it hurt anyone. He skidded to a halt, the bot's red optics locking onto him. He waved his arms, calling for its attention. The zero-pointer pivoted, its treads grinding as it lumbered toward him. Izuku's heart raced, but he was ready. He pressed the Omnitrix-a's faceplate, reverting in a flash of green to his human form, standing defiantly before the towering machine. He whispered to himself, his fingers hovering over the dial. The bot's arm descended, aimed to crush him. He twisted the dial, selecting a new silhouette, and slammed it down. Upgrade, let's go. Green light erupted, and Izuku's body melted into a liquid metal cascade, reshaping into a biomechanical entity. His skin became a sleek, black and green plasma, fluid yet solid, with glowing circuits pulsing across his surface. A single, circular eye glowed at his center, and tendrils of nanotech extended from his limbs, ready to merge with any machine. When the light faded, he was Upgrade, a galvanic mechamorph, humming with technological potential. Present Mix's voice boomed with awe, marveling at Upgrade's transformation. Upgrade lunged, his liquid form stretching to envelop the zero-pointer's arm. His nanotech fused with its circuits, infiltrating its systems. He rewired its targeting, forcing its arm to halt mid-swing. Not crushing anyone today, he thought, glowing as he redirected the bot's treads, steering it away from the examinees and toward an empty lot. The zero-pointer groaned, its systems fighting Upgrade's control, but he held firm, his tendrils spreading deeper. He grunted, diverting its power to shut down its weapons. The bot staggered, then collapsed, its lights flickering out as Upgrade disengaged, sliding off in a fluid wave and reforming on the pavement. Present Mike shouted in disbelief, declaring that the examinee had taken down the zero-pointer. No points, but that was hero material right there. Izuku, reverting to human form in a final flash, collapsed to his knees, breathing. The brown-haired girl ran to him, her eyes wide with gratitude, thanking him for saving her. That was incredible, Izuku thought, managing a tired smile. The Omnitrix beeped, its timer resetting, but his spirit soared. He had faced the zero-pointer, saved someone, and proved his worth, not just to UA, but to himself. Present Mike called out that time was almost up, urging the heroes to keep earning points. Izuku rose, scanning the city for more bots. The Omnitrix hummed, ready for the next challenge, and he ran forward, his heart alight with the fire of a hero in the making. The apartment was steeped in the soft glow of evening, the hum of Mizudafu's cityscape a distant lullaby beyond the windows. A week had passed since the UA entrance exam, and Izuku Midoriya sat cross-legged on his bed, the Omnitrix casting a faint green sheen across his room. The weight of waiting pressed against him, each day stretching longer than the last as he anticipated the results that would shape his future. Dinner, a hearty spread of 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽𝐻's homemade yakitori and miso-glazed eggplant, sat warmly in his stomach, but his mind was restless, tethered to the memory of the mock city, the zero-pointer, and the brown-haired girl he had saved as 𝗧𝗧𝗟𝗘 and Upgrade. Downstairs, the muffled strains of 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐻's favorite drama show drifted up, punctuated by her occasional sniffles. The show, a tearjerker about star-crossed lovers, always left her misty-eyed, and Izuku could picture her curled on the couch, a box of tissues at her side. He smiled faintly, his fingers grazing the Omnitrix-a's dial. Out of boredom, he turned it, the holographic interface flickering to life. Silhouettes of his 10 aliens, Heat Blast's fiery form, Forearm's hulking frame, Diamond Head's crystalline edges, Stinkfly's wings, Wildmutt's feral bulk, Ghost Freak's spectral shroud, 𝗧𝗧𝗟𝗘's sleek speed, Ripjaw's aquatic jaws, Gray Matter's diminutive intellect, and Upgrade's liquid metal sheen, cycled before him, each a testament to the power he had wielded at Dagobah Beach and beyond. He murmured to himself, pausing on Ghost Freak's eerie silhouette, still in disbelief of their reality. Leaning back, he glanced at the All Might poster on his wall, its grin a silent encouragement. Doubt crept in as he wondered if he had done enough. The exam had been a whirlwind, 45 villain points from smashing bots, the zero-pointer's defeat, the girl's grateful eyes. But had it been enough to earn a place at UA? A knock at his door jolted him upright. 𝐼𝐻𝐻 poked her head in, her eyes red-rimmed but bright with urgency. She exclaimed that the envelope from UA had just arrived in the mail. Izuku's heart lurched, his boredom evaporating. He scrambled off the bed, asking if it was really here. 𝐼𝐻𝐻 held up a sleek, silver envelope stamped with UA's crest, her hands shaking slightly. She had just checked the mailbox, and there it was, sitting on top like it was waiting for him. She urged him to open it. He followed her to the living room, his pulse racing as she handed him the envelope. Its surface was smooth, almost too pristine, as if it carried the weight of his dreams. 𝐼𝐻𝐻 hovered nearby, her drama show forgotten, the television's soft glow casting shadows across her hopeful face. She encouraged him to see what they said, confident he had done his best. Izuku swallowed, his fingers trembling as he tore open the seal. A small, metallic disc slid out, glinting under the lamplight. Puzzled, he turned it over, and before he could question it, the disc hummed, projecting a beam of light that coalesced into a holographic figure, a small, white-furred creature with a bear-like face, dressed in a crisp suit. Principal 𝐒𝐻𝐻𝐿, UA's enigmatic headmaster, stood before them, his beady eyes twinkling with intelligence. 𝐒𝐻𝐻𝐿 greeted Izuku warmly, addressing him with authority. He acknowledged the anxious wait for the results of the entrance exam. Izuku nodded, his throat too tight to speak. 𝐼𝐻𝐻 gripped his shoulder, her breath hitching with excitement. 𝐒𝐻𝐻𝐿 continued, praising Izuku's performance on the written exam, noting that he had aced every section with a perfect score. Even the optional question, designed to stump the brightest candidates, had been answered with remarkable insight. Izuku's eyes widened, a flush creeping up his neck as he realized he had achieved a perfect score. 𝐼𝐻𝐻's radiant smile and welling tears filled him with pride. 𝐒𝐻𝐻 then shifted his tone to one of anticipation, stating that the practical exam was where heroes truly shined, and shine he did. Izuku had amassed 45 villain points by neutralizing robotic enemies, a score that alone would secure his admission. His strategic use of the environment had impressed the judges, especially for someone without a conventional quirk. Izuku's heart soared, but he sensed 𝐒𝐻𝐻 wasn't finished. The principal's eyes gleamed as he continued, emphasizing that UA valued more than combat prowess. They sought those who embodied the spirit of heroism, and Izuku had exemplified that spirit. When he risked everything to save a fellow examinee from the zero-pointer, he demonstrated courage and selflessness. For that act, the judges awarded him 70 rescue points. 𝐼𝐻𝐻 gasped, her hands flying to her mouth, astonished at the news. Izuku nodded, recalling the grateful eyes of the girl he had saved. 𝐒𝐻𝐻 clapped his tiny paws, the sound sharp in the quiet room. Those 70 rescue points, combined with his villain points, gave him a total of 115 points, placing him first among all examinees across all testing sites. 𝐒𝐻𝐻 congratulated Izuku on his acceptance into UA High's hero course. Izuku's breath caught, his vision blurring as tears pricked his eyes. He could hardly believe he had secured first place. 𝐼𝐻𝐻 cried out in joy, pulling him into a fierce hug, her tears dampening his hair. She expressed her pride, exclaiming that he was going to UA. He hugged her back, his heart pounding with joy and disbelief. The Omnitrix pulsed on his wrist, a silent partner in his triumph. However, 𝐒𝐻𝐻's hologram flickered, drawing his attention back. The principal's expression turned serious as he lowered his voice, stating that there was one more thing. His performance had been unique, and his abilities piqued 𝐒𝐻𝐻's curiosity. He invited Izuku to UA in 2 days for a private meeting to discuss his future and the remarkable device he wielded. Would he accept? Izuku froze, his joy tinged with apprehension. He wondered if 𝐒𝐻𝐻 knew about the Omnitrix. 𝐼𝐻𝐻's eyes darted to him, her brow furrowing with concern. She questioned if a meeting like that was normal. 𝐻𝐵𝐷𝐼𝐻, it's a rare honor, 𝐒𝐻𝐻 said, his smile reassuring. Your son has potential beyond what we've seen, and I wish to understand it better. Expect further details soon. For now, celebrate your achievement, young hero. UA awaits you. The hologram vanished, the disc dimming. Izuku stared at it, his mind racing. First place. A meeting with 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽. The Omnitrix hummed, its glow a quiet promise or a warning. He wondered what 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 wanted with him. Inko cupped his face, her eyes shining with pride and worry. Whatever it is, you'll handle it, she said. You've come this far, Izuku. You're stronger than you know. He nodded, clutching the disc, his gaze drifting to the Omnitrix. 2 days. A one-on-one with the principal. The path to heroism had just taken an unexpected turn, and Izuku felt the weight of the unknown pressing against his newfound victory. The morning sun cast long shadows across the UA campus, its towering spires gleaming like sentinels of ambition. Izuku Midoriya, dressed in a simple green hoodie and jeans, stood at the edge of the entrance plaza, his sneakers scuffing the pavement. 2 days had passed since the holographic message from Principal 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽, and the weight of that invitation, a private meeting with UA's enigmatic headmaster, sat heavy in his chest. The Omnitrix, snug beneath his sleeve, pulsed faintly, a reminder of the secret he carried. He stared at the massive gates, their steel surface unyielding, and a flicker of doubt crept in. He muttered to himself about how he was supposed to get in, wondering if he should knock or if there was a buzzer. Before he could overthink further, the gates groaned, parting with a mechanical hum to reveal a small, white-furred figure in a tailored suit. Principal 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 stood there, his beady eyes twinkling with mischief and intelligence, a wide smile stretching across his bear-like muzzle. Izuku felt a rush of nerves as 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 called out to him, appreciating his punctuality in a future hero. He hurried forward, his backpack bouncing against his shoulders as he followed the diminutive principal through the gates. The campus was quieter today, the exam frenzy replaced by an almost serene stillness, broken only by the rustle of leaves in the breeze. Of course I was. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 said, his tiny paws clasped behind his back as he led the way. A personal invitation deserves a personal welcome, don't you think? Besides, I'm eager to get to know the examinee who turned our zero-pointer into a glorified paperweight. Izuku flushed, feeling a mix of embarrassment and pride. He explained that he hadn't meant to break it, he just wanted to keep everyone safe. And that's precisely why you're here, 𝐒𝐮𝐽𝐽 said, glancing back with a knowing glint. Now, come along. My office is this way, and I've prepared something special for our chat. They wound through UA's pristine halls, the walls lined with portraits of legendary heroes and display cases gleaming with trophies. Izuku's eyes darted everywhere, cataloging details until they reached a polished wooden door. 𝐒𝐮𝐽 pushed it open, revealing a cozy office bathed in warm light. Bookshelves lined the walls, stuffed with tomes and trinkets, while a large window overlooked the campus. At the center sat a small table, adorned with a chessboard, its pieces meticulously arranged, flanked by 2 steaming cups and a teapot shaped like a smiling cat. Welcome to my sanctuary, 𝐒𝐮𝐽𝐽 said, hopping onto a cushioned chair. Please, take a seat. Would you care for some tea? It's my special chamomile blend, calms the nerves, sharpens the mind. Izuku slid into the opposite chair, his backpack resting by his feet. He accepted a cup, the tea's floral aroma soothing, though his pulse still raced. This is really nice, he thought. 𝐒𝐮𝐽's smile widened as he poured his own tea. I find a good cup of tea sets the stage for meaningful conversation. Now, tell me, Midoriya, have you ever played chess? Izuku sipped the tea, its warmth grounding him. When I was younger, he said, eyeing the board. My mom taught me. I wasn't great, but I liked the strategy. Figuring out how all the pieces work together. It's kind of like analyzing heroes. Splendid. 𝐒𝐮𝐽𝐽 clapped his paws, his enthusiasm infectious. Then let's have a game. It's been ages since I had a worthy opponent. You'll be white, your move, young hero. Izuku hesitated, then pushed a pawn forward, the soft clack of the piece echoing in the quiet room. He focused intently, and 𝐒𝐮𝐽𝐽 responded swiftly, his knight leaping into play with a flourish. The game unfolded, each move a dance of calculation and instinct. Izuku's mind, honed by months as gray matter, saw patterns on the board, potential traps, openings, sacrifices. He countered 𝐒𝐮𝐽𝐽's aggressive bishop with a defensive rook, his confidence growing. You're quite the tactician, 𝐒𝐮𝐽𝐽 said, his eyes gleaming as he advanced a pawn. I expected as much from someone who scored perfectly on our written exam. But tell me, Midoriya, what's that curious device on your wrist? Izuku's hand froze mid-move, the Omnitrix glinting under the office's light. He set the piece down, narrowly avoiding a blunder, and took a breath to steady himself. He needed to be honest but careful. 𝗍𝐬𝐸 leaned forward, his smile unreadable. Yes, that rather extraordinary watch. It's no ordinary accessory, is it? Your performance in the practical exam, such versatility, such power, suggests something beyond a typical quirk. If you're to make a convincing statement, young man, it must be serious and precise. So, what is it? Izuku's mind raced, gray matter's clarity guiding him. He couldn't reveal the Omnitrix's alien origins, not yet, but he needed an answer that satisfied 𝗍𝐬𝐸's piercing curiosity. He moved his queen, a deliberate play to buy time, and met the principal's gaze. It's a regulator, he said, choosing his words with care. It helps me control my body, keep my abilities from going haywire. Without it, I'd be unstable, maybe even dangerous. 𝗍𝐬𝐸's eyes narrowed, but his smile didn't waver. Regulator, you say? Fascinating. He moved his bishop, pinning Izuku's knight. A device that stabilizes such remarkable abilities must be quite sophisticated. Where did you acquire it? Izuku swallowed, countering with a pawn to protect his position. It was a gift, he said, his voice steady despite the sweat beading on his brow. From someone who believed I could be a hero. I'm still learning how it works, but it's helped me channel my potential. Intriguing. 𝗍𝐬𝐸 said, his tone light but probing as he advanced his rook. A gift that lets you shift forms, adapt to any challenge. Quite the tool for a hero in training. By the way, Izuku's eyes flicked to the board, his heart skipping. Already? He moved his king, his mind split between the game and 𝗍𝐬𝐸's questions. I'm trying to use it responsibly, he said. To help people like I did in the exam. And help you did. 𝗍𝐬𝐸 said, his paw hovering over a knight. 70 rescue points for saving that examinee. Most impressive. But such power raises questions, Midoriya. UA must ensure its students are safe, their abilities understood. Izuku felt a mix of curiosity and determination as he faced Principal 𝗍𝐬𝐸 during their chess match. He wanted to be transparent but needed time to figure out the details himself. 𝗍𝐬𝐸 chuckled warmly, capturing Izuku's pawn, and reminded him that while they had time, they also needed answers. The game continued, each move a test, each response a gamble. The Omnitrix hummed on Izuku's wrist, a secret he guarded fiercely, but 𝗍𝐬𝐸's keen mind was a formidable opponent. Izuku was resolute, advancing his queen and declaring he wouldn't back down from this game or UA. 𝗍𝐬𝐸's eyes sparkled with interest as he countered, encouraging Izuku to see the board and his future filled with possibilities. As the game progressed, pieces fell, strategies unfolded, and the air thickened with unspoken questions. Izuku's heart raced, not just for the checkmate he aimed for but for the path ahead, a path where the Omnitrix and 𝗍𝐬𝐸's scrutiny would shape his destiny in ways he couldn't yet comprehend. The waves of Dagobah Municipal Beach lapped at the shore, their rhythm a quiet him under the fading light of dusk. Izuku stood alone on the sand, his sneakers sinking into the grains he had painstakingly cleared over months of hard work. The beach, once a wasteland of debris, now stretched clean and open, reflecting his own transformation. The Omnitrix on his wrist glowed faintly, its hum a steady companion as he gazed at the horizon, where the sea met a sky ablaze with streaks of crimson and violet. Tomorrow marked his first day at UA High, a milestone that felt both exhilarating and daunting. The weight of Principal 𝗍𝐬𝐸's cryptic meeting, the chess game, and the unspoken questions about the Omnitrix lingered like a storm cloud. Izuku whispered to himself, reflecting on his achievement of getting into UA and pondering what came next. He turned the Omnitrix's dial, watching the silhouettes of his 10 aliens flicker in the holographic glow. Each form was a tool, a piece of his potential, but also a mystery. 𝗍𝐬𝐸's piercing curiosity had shaken him, forcing him to confront how little he truly understood about the device. He spoke to the Omnitrix, expressing his longing to be more than just its power. He needed to be himself. As the tide rolled in, brushing against his sneakers, he stepped back, his heart heavy with resolve. Tomorrow was the start of something new, and he clenched his fists, determined to move forward without looking back. The next morning, the Midoriya apartment buzzed with quiet anticipation. Izuku stood before his mirror, adjusting the crisp gray blazer of his UA uniform with blue-green trimmings, the red tie a bold slash against his white shirt and dark blue-green briefs. His signature red shoes completed the look. His backpack, packed with notebooks and pens, sat by the door, a reminder of the mental marathon ahead. Inko moved briskly in the kitchen, preparing a bento box filled with tamagoyaki, grilled salmon, and pickled vegetables, fuel for the day she knew would test her son. She called out to him, her voice warm but tinged with emotion, as she set a plate of fluffy pancakes on the table. Her eyes softened as he entered, and she smiled, her expression trembling with pride. She remarked on how grown-up he looked in his uniform and acknowledged that he was really doing this. Izuku nodded, sitting across from her, his fork hovering over the pancakes. He admitted he was nervous but felt ready. Inko reached across the table, squeezing his hand and assuring him he was more than ready. She reminded him of his accomplishments, cleaning the beach, passing the exam, and saving a girl, highlighting that he had a heart bigger than any quirk. She glanced at the Omnitrix, her brow furrowing slightly, and acknowledged the strength it had given him, emphasizing that he was the one making it heroic. Izuku felt his throat tighten at her words, which anchored him. He thanked her, his voice thick with emotion, and promised to make her proud. Inko rose to wrap him in a hug, her eyes glistening as she pressed a gentle kiss to his forehead. She encouraged him to show UA what he was made of, reminding him to be safe, smart, and true to himself. He promised he would, returning her hug with fierce gratitude. Grabbing his backpack with the Omnitrix hidden beneath his sleeve, he stepped toward the door, assuring her he would see her tonight. As he slipped on his shoes, Inko called out to him, declaring him her hero, no matter what. Once outside, Izuku descended the apartment stairs, his mother's words echoing in his mind. The walk to the train station was a blur, the city waking around him, vendors opening stalls, commuters hurrying past, the hum of life a constant pulse. At the platform, he boarded the train to, his reflection in the window showing a boy with wide green eyes and a jaw set with determination. The Omnitrix pressed against his wrist, a silent reminder of the power he carried and the responsibility that came with it. He muttered to himself about the intensity of the first day, anticipating classes, training, and possibly combat drills. With 10 aliens at his disposal, he knew he needed to be strategic. Nizu was watching and so was everyone else. He clenched his fists, his gaze hardening as he resolved not to make any mistakes. The train screeched to a halt, and Izuku joined the stream of students pouring into WhatIf station. The UA campus loomed ahead, its gates open like a challenge. He spotted other first years in their uniforms, some exuding confidence, others visibly nervous. His mind flashed to Pugu, the brown-haired girl, and the bespectacled boy who had scolded him. They were all here somewhere, and they were all competition. A voice jolted him from his thoughts. A girl with pink hair and goggles perched on her head, her uniform slightly modified with a tool belt, approached him. She greeted him enthusiastically, noting that he looked like he was about to face a villain instead of a classroom. Izuku managed a shy smile, explaining he was just psyching himself up for the big day. The girl introduced herself as 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴𝐻𝐿 from the support course, offering her services for any gear he might need. Izuku hesitated, instinctively covering the Omnitrix as he introduced himself as Izuku Midoriya from the hero course, mentioning that his quirk was complicated. Mei's eyes lit up at the challenge, encouraging him to reach out if he needed something built and wishing him luck. As she bounded off toward the support building, her energy was infectious, but it didn't ease the weight in his chest. Approaching the gates, his steps were deliberate, the Omnitrix's hum a quiet reassurance. He paused at the threshold, acknowledging that the first day would drain him physically and mentally, but he had trained for this moment. Izuku Midoriya felt the weight of his abilities, Heat Blast's fire, XR8's speed, Gray Matter's intelligence. He took a deep breath, determination settling in. He had to handle this. A teacher at the gate checked his ID and waved him through, directing him to Class 1A in the main building on the 3rd floor. He promised he wouldn't be late as he stepped onto the campus, the warmth of his mother's kiss and his own resolve pushing him forward. The Omnitrix pulsed gently, a silent vow that he would face whatever challenges UA presented, not just as a boy with a mysterious device, but as a hero ready to carve his own path. The halls of UA High buzzed with the energy of a new era, polished floors reflecting the morning light as Izuku navigated the labyrinthine corridors to Class 1A. His UA uniform felt both foreign and empowering, the red tie a bold declaration of his place among aspiring heroes. The Omnitrix, concealed beneath his sleeve, hummed softly, its presence a quiet anchor amidst the whirlwind of nerves. His mother's parting words, "Be safe, be smart, be you," echoed in his mind, grounding him as he approached the towering door marked 1A. The weight of his first day pressed against him, a mix of anticipation and dread, but he squared his shoulders, ready to face whatever lay beyond. He pushed the door open, and a cacophony of voices greeted him. The classroom was a kaleidoscope of personalities, students chatting, quirks sparking, the air alive with potential. Izuku's eyes scanned the room, landing on a familiar figure slouched at a desk near the window. Katsuki Bakugo, his spiky blonde hair unmistakable, had his feet propped up, his intense glare fixed on nothing in particular. The sight twisted Izuku's gut, memories of their confrontation at the exam gate flaring. He forced his gaze away. Before he could choose a seat, a tall figure loomed, the same bespectacled examinee from the testing site, his posture rigid. He addressed Izuku with authority, noting his fidgeting before the exam and acknowledging his achievement in making it into Class 1A, though he questioned Izuku's conduct. Izuku blinked, nerves jangling but resolve firm. He clarified that he wasn't fidgeting, he was trying to help someone and introduced himself. The boy adjusted his glasses, his expression softening slightly. He introduced himself as Tenya Ida, from a family known for their heroic legacy. He apologized for his hasty judgment and praised Izuku's performance in the exam, expressing admiration for his extraordinary score. Izuku felt his cheeks flush, instinctively covering the Omnitrix as he stammered that he just did what he thought was right. Ida continued, emphasizing that Izuku's instinct was born of preparation and that he aspired to match such selflessness in his own hero journey. Before Izuku could respond, a bright voice cut through the room. It was Ochako Uraraka, the brown-haired girl from the exam, her cheeks flushed and smile wide. She bounded over, expressing her gratitude for Izuku saving her from the giant robot. Izuku's heart skipped at her words, and he returned her smile, glad she was okay. She praised his actions during the exam, calling him amazing. However, Bakugo interrupted, his voice sharp as he dismissed their conversation, sneering at Izuku and belittling his achievements. Izuku clenched his fists but held Bakugo's gaze, asserting that he wasn't quirkless and that he earned his place in Class 1A. Bakugo's eyes narrowed, and sparks crackled in his palms as he threatened Izuku, declaring he would crush him. Ida intervened, reminding everyone that they were in a classroom, not a battlefield. Bakugo scoffed and returned to his seat, while Uraraka leaned closer to Izuku, encouraging him not to let Bakugo get to him. The classroom door slid open, silencing the chatter. A disheveled man entered, black hair tied back, eyes shadowed with exhaustion, and a scarf coiled around his neck. Shota Aizawa, their homeroom teacher, radiated an aura of quiet authority. His gaze swept the room, lingering on Izuku, who felt a chill despite the warmth of the Omnitrix. Aizawa instructed everyone to sit down, introducing himself and warning them that if they were there to play hero, they should leave. The class stilled, his words striking like a bucket of ice water. Izuku sank into a desk near Uraraka, his pulse quickening as Aizawa's sharp eyes assessed him. Aizawa acknowledged Izuku as the one who topped the exam, noting his impressive score but reminding him that points don't make a hero. He then pulled out gym uniforms, tossing them onto a desk and announcing they would be doing a quirk assessment test outside. Uraraka whispered in disbelief about the test on the first day, while Ida stood up, determined to demonstrate their capabilities. Bakugo seized the opportunity to assert his demps, warning Izuku not to think he could best him. Ignoring Bakugo, Izuku's mind raced at the thought of the assessment. The Omnitrix hummed, ready to respond, but Aizawa's scrutiny felt like a spotlight. Izuku murmured to himself that he could do this. He had to. Aizawa barked for everyone to head outside, giving them 10 minutes to change. The class scrambled, and Izuku followed, heart pounding with a mix of dread and determination. Uraraka fell into step beside him, her smile nervous yet encouraging. They both resolved to show what they could do as they reached the field, but Aizawa's gaze locked onto Izuku again, a silent challenge that sent a shiver down his spine. The Omnitrix pulsed, a promise of power, but the test ahead would demand more than aliens. It would demand everything he had. The UA training field sprawled under the midday sun, a vast expanse of turf and equipment buzzing with the energy of Class 1A. 20 students stood in their gym uniforms, quirks crackling and muscles tensing as Shota Aizawa, their stern homeroom teacher, outlined the quirk assessment test. His scarf fluttered in the breeze, his tired eyes scanning the group with predatory precision. Izuku Midoriya felt the weight of that gaze, the Omnitrix hidden beneath his sleeve pulsing like a second heartbeat. His classmates, each a unique blend of talent and ambition, surrounded him, Rikido Sato flexing his muscular arms, 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐸𝐵's frog-like stance poised, 𝗧𝗜𝗧𝗟𝗘's extra limbs folded neatly, Koji Koda whispering to a nearby bird, 𝐒𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐺 twirling an earphone jack, Tenya Ida standing rigid with purpose, Minoru Mineta fidgeting with his sticky ball, Denki Kaminari sparking with nervous energy, Eijiro Kirishima grinning with infectious enthusiasm, Mina Ishido bouncing on her toes, Momo Yaoyorozu adjusting her ponytail with calm confidence, Ochako Uraraka offering Izuku a reassuring smile, Toru Hagakure's invisible form betrayed by her floating uniform, Masahiro Ojiro swishing his tail, Fumikage Tokoyami's dark aura brooding, Yuga Aoyama sparkling with flair, Shoto Todoroki's icy demeanor unyielding, Hantashiro stretching his tape-like elbows, Katsuki Bakugo glaring daggers, and Izuku himself, heart-pounding with resolve. Aizawa's voice was a low growl as he addressed the class, emphasizing the seriousness of the upcoming tests. 8 assessments would measure their quirks' potential, speed, strength, endurance, and more. Perform poorly and they would be out. The students responded with determination, eager to showcase their abilities. As the first test, the 50-meter dash, was announced, Izuku's mind raced with strategy. He paired with Bakugo, who wore a confident smirk. The challenge was set, and Izuku selected XLR8's form, transforming into a sleek, velociraptor-like creature built for speed. When the transformation was complete, he was ready. With Aizawa's mark, Bakugo blasted forward, propelled by explosions. Izuku surged ahead, the world blurring around him as he reached top speed, crossing the finish line in a heartbeat. The class erupted in surprise at his time, while Bakugo's shock was evident as he stumbled across moments later. Bakugo, frustrated and furious, accused Izuku of cheating, but Aizawa swiftly intervened, reminding Bakugo to control his temper. As the tests continued, each student showcased their unique abilities, pushing their limits and demonstrating their growth. When it was Izuku's turn for the strength-based ball throw, he transformed into 4 arms, a towering figure of muscle. He gripped the ball firmly and hurled it into the sky, achieving an impressive distance that left the class in awe. Bakugo's glare was intense, but he remained silent, his fists clenched in frustration. As the tests progressed, Izuku relied on his training and physical abilities, conserving the Omnitrix for when it was truly needed. By the time the final test, a combat simulation against training bots, arrived, he was the last to go. Aizawa's voice cut through the air, challenging him to face the bots without the Omnitrix. Izuku hesitated, the weight of Aizawa's challenge pressing down on him. He realized that without the Omnitrix, he was just Izuku, quirkless and ordinary. Yet he had trained hard, fought, and saved others. He understood that he was more than the device he relied on. As the training bots powered up, their red optics gleaming, Izuku prepared to face the challenge ahead, determined to prove himself. The bots' red optics glowed, their mechanical limbs whirring, but Izuku's gaze was locked on Aizawa, his heart pounding not with fear but with a fire kindled by years of being underestimated. The Omnitrix pulsed beneath his sleeve, its 10 aliens. Heat blast, for arms, Diamond Head, Stinkfly, Wild Mutt, Ghost Freak, 𝗧𝗧𝗟𝗘, Ripjaws, Gray Matter, Upgrade, ready to answer, but Aizawa's challenge demanded more than power. It demanded defiance. Izuku stepped forward, his green eyes blazing with resolve. He expressed his respect for Aizawa but questioned why he was the only one being told to fight without his quirk. He pointed out that others, like Aoyama, were allowed to use their support tools. A collective gasp rippled through the class, with various reactions from his classmates, including surprise and intrigue. Aizawa acknowledged Izuku's boldness but clarified that his test was to assess reliance on tools. He emphasized that a hero who depends solely on a device risks losing everything if it fails. Izuku responded firmly, asserting that he was more than just his gadget and was ready to show what he could do. He twisted the Omnitrix-a's dial, and the interface flared with Diamond Head's crystalline silhouette. With a powerful transformation, he became Diamond Head, a Petrosapian gleaming under the sun, ready for action. As the bots charged, Diamond Head moved with precision. He unleashed crystal shards from his fist, slicing through a bot's chassis, and deflected another's attack with a shield formed from his hand. He declared that they wouldn't get through him and fired a volley of crystal spikes that pinned a second bot to the ground. His classmates watched in awe, impressed by his control and versatility, while Bakugo observed with a scowl, though a flicker of unease crossed his face. After defeating the final bot, Diamond Head reverted to Izuku, who stood tall despite his slightly rumpled gym uniform. He approached Aizawa, determined not to be underestimated any longer. He expressed his frustration with being labeled quirkless and useless for so long, declaring his commitment to becoming a hero. Aizawa acknowledged his point, a hint of a smirk appearing on his lips. The class murmured, impressed by Izuku's boldness. His classmates praised his conviction and passion for heroism, which brought a small smile to his face. As the day ended, he grabbed his curriculum papers and headed for the exit, reflecting on the intensity of the day. At the train station, he was joined by Ochako and Ida, who celebrated his achievements and encouraged him as they walked together. Izuku made his way to Dagoba Beach, where his journey had begun. The sun dipped low, painting the waves in shades of amber and indigo. He stood at the water's edge, letting the tide's rhythm soothe him. As he contemplated the day's events, a sudden beep interrupted his thoughts. The Omnitrix flashed yellow, its interface flickering erratically, and a garbled voice crackled through static, mentioning a priority signal and calibration before cutting off. The light returned to green, leaving Izuku staring at his wrist, his heart racing with curiosity and concern. He wondered about the strange signal and scanned the empty beach, the waves offering no answers, only deepening the mystery of the device and the path it was forging for him. The weeks at UA High blurred into a whirlwind of chalk dust and ambition, each day a step deeper into the crucible of hero training. Class 1A settled into a rhythm, their mornings filled with academic lessons while afternoons pushed their physical limits in gym drills. Izuku thrived in the academic grind, his mind sharpened by gray matter's lingering clarity, but the Omnitrix on his wrist was a constant reminder of the extraordinary path he tread. The cafeteria became a sanctuary, its tables laden with steaming bowls of ramen, crispy tempura, and colorful bento boxes crafted by Lunch Rush, UA's culinary hero. Izuku savored every bite, the flavors a brief respite from the intensity of his new life. His classmates shared their enthusiasm for the food, discussing how proper nutrition enhanced their quirk performance. Izuku nodded, his own tray piled with rice and teriyaki chicken, but his thoughts wandered as he contemplated the challenges ahead. The Omnitrix hummed softly, its 10 aliens: Heat Blast, for arms, Diamond Head, Stinkfly, Wild Mutt, Ghost Freak, 𝗧𝗧𝗟𝗘, Ripjaws, Gray Matter, Upgrade, waiting for their moment. Izuku glanced at Ochako Uraraka, who sat across from him, her cheeks puffed with rice. She tilted her head and observed that he seemed quiet. He offered a small smile, explaining that he was just thinking about everything: classes, training, and the weight of expectations. Denki Kaminari chimed in, waving a chopstick and praising Izuku for his achievements, like topping the entrance exam and standing up to Aizawa. Izuku felt his cheeks flush, especially when he caught Katsuki Bakugo's glare from a nearby table, the blonde's frustration evident as he stabbed at his food. Izuku looked away, the memory of Bakugo's taunts lingering in his mind. Tenya Ida, seated beside him, adjusted his glasses and commended Izuku's focus, emphasizing the importance of striving for excellence in both academics and heroics. 𝐼𝐶 added that heroics were the real deal, expressing eagerness for action against villains. Mina Ishido, her excitement palpable, declared her longing to take down bad guys. Fumikage Tokoyami reminded them that true heroism required discipline. The cafeteria chatter faded as Aizawa strode in, his scarf trailing behind him. He announced that they needed to finish eating and head to the lecture hall for their first heroic lesson in 20 minutes. The class erupted in whispers, excitement rippling through the group. Kirishima celebrated the upcoming lesson, while Kyokajiro wondered who would be teaching. Izuku's heart raced as he followed his classmates to the lecture hall, a spacious room filled with tiered seats and a wide screen. Anticipation filled the air, but his stomach twisted when the door opened to reveal a towering figure in a blue and red costume, his blonde hair styled into iconic antennae. All Might, the symbol of peace, entered with a grin that lit up the room. Izuku's breath caught, and he lowered his gaze, haunted by All Might's previous words about his potential. All Might welcomed the young heroes with enthusiasm, announcing that he would guide their heroic lessons. He emphasized that their journey to greatness would begin with a foundational lecture on combat and rescue. The class cheered, with Aoyama sparkling with delight at the opportunity to learn from such a revered figure. Ida expressed the honor of receiving guidance from the symbol of peace. As All Might's gaze swept the room, it paused on Izuku, who kept his eyes fixed on his desk, gripping the Omnitrix tightly. All Might spoke about the potential within each student, explaining that heroism was not just about strength but also heart, strategy, and sacrifice. He outlined the principles of saving lives under pressure, and Izuku listened intently, his notebook open, though his heart was a storm of emotions. He reflected on All Might's presence, which was both inspiring and painful, a reminder of his past doubts. Kaminari leaned over, noticing Izuku's distant expression and checking in on him. Izuku assured him he was focused, while Uraraka encouraged him with a warm smile, reminding him that All Might was there to help. Tokoyami added that All Might's presence demanded they rise to the occasion. The lecture unfolded, with All Might sharing tales of heroism and practical advice. Izuku absorbed every word, his notes a tapestry of strategies, but he avoided meeting All Might's gaze. When the bell rang, Aizawa returned, curtly informing them that their hero costumes were in their lockers and that they would wear them for their first combat training the next day. The class buzzed with excitement as students scattered, eager to see their costumes. Izuku lingered, his heart pounding as he headed to the locker room alone. Bakugo brushed past him, growling a warning not to think he was special just because he got in. Izuku quietly resolved to prove himself, feeling the hum of the Omnitrix strengthen his determination. In the locker room, the air was cool against his skin as he approached his assigned locker. Inside waited his hero costume, designed to complement the Omnitrix's versatility, a tangible step toward his dream. He reached for the handle, anticipation coursing through him, the weight of All Might's words and his own defiance colliding. What lay within would define his next challenge, and the Omnitrix pulsed, ready to meet it. The UA training ground loomed under a sky heavy with clouds, its mock city a jagged maze of steel and concrete, primed for the first combat training of Class 1A. The air crackled with anticipation as the students donned their hero costumes, each a bold declaration of their identities. Izuku adjusted his dark green jacket, its left sleeve cut shorter to reveal the Omnitrix, its glow a quiet promise. Black military-style breathes hugged his legs, tucked into sturdy combat boots that grounded him against the pavement. His heart raced, the weight of All Might's presence and the impending battle pressing upon him. All Might stood atop an observation tower, his costume a beacon as he scanned the teams, lingering on Izuku. The boy who had once stood trembling before him now radiated a quiet strength that puzzled the symbol of peace. In the preparation area, teams huddled, strategizing. Izuku glanced at Uraraka, her sleek suit gleaming. She expressed her excitement, confident they could outsmart their opponents. Izuku emphasized the importance of strategy, noting Bakugo's aggressive nature and Kaminari's electricity. They discussed their objective, capturing the bomb or their opponent's bands. Uraraka agreed to use her abilities to disrupt their foes while Izuku would lead the charge. Nearby, Tenya Ida strategized with Momo Yaoyorozu, who crafted tools to counter their opponents. Eijiro Kirishima and Hantashiro, both eager for action, prepared for their own challenges, ready to showcase their skills in the upcoming battle. Ida was fast, but they were tougher. Shiro grinned, flexing his tape elbows, ready to swing circles around their opponents. 𝐬𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗓, dressed in a green aquatic suit, teamed up with Fumikage Tokoyami, whose dark cloak billowed dramatically. 𝐬𝗓 suggested they use the shadows, her tongue flicking playfully, confident that Mina and Aoyama wouldn't see them coming. Tokoyami agreed, his dark shadow stirring in anticipation, noting that their opponent's flashiness would be their downfall. Mina Ishido sparkled in her pink, acid-resistant suit as she danced beside Yuga Aoyama, whose glittering cape caught the light. She exclaimed they would dazzle and melt the competition, twirling with excitement. Aoyama winked, declaring that his laser would blind their foes with brilliance. Rikido Sato, clad in a tank-like costume, partnered with Mezu Shoji, whose imposing multi-limbed suit added to their strength. Sato cracked his knuckles, ready to smash through obstacles, while Shoji prepared to scout ahead, confident that Ojiro and Koda wouldn't expect their reach. Masahiro Ojiro, in a martial arts-inspired suit tailored for his tail, nodded to Koji Koda, whose earthy costume blended seamlessly with nature. Ojiro suggested they use the terrain to their advantage and asked Koda if his animals could help. Koda nodded shyly, a bird perched on his shoulder, signing that they would warn them of danger. Kyoka Jiro, dressed in her punk rock suit wired for sound, teamed up with Minoru Mineta, whose grape-themed costume was absurdly sticky. Jiro rolled her eyes, stating she would track with her jacks, while advising Mineta to avoid getting stuck. Mineta squeaked in response, tossing a sticky ball, confident that Shoto and Hagakure wouldn't know what hit them. Shoto Todoroki, in his half-ice, half-fire suit, stood beside the invisible Toru Hagakure, whose gloves and boots floated in the air. Shoto declared he would freeze their traps, while Hagakure chirped that she would scout ahead, her form shimmering faintly. All Might's voice boomed over the intercom, announcing the start of the battle between heroes and villains. They had to defend the bomb or capture it, and losing their bands meant they were out. The mock city erupted into chaos. Ida and Yaoyorozu charged a building, Ida's engines roaring as Yaoyorozu crafted a net launcher, only to be ambushed by Kirishima's hardened fists and Shiro's tape. 𝐬𝗓 and Tokoyami slunk through the shadows, dodging Mina's acid sprays and Aoyama's dazzling beams. Sato and Shoji barreled through walls, countered by Ojiro's tail strikes and Koda's bird swarm. Jiro's sonic waves clashed with Todoroki's ice walls, while Hagakure slipped past Mineta's sticky traps. Izuku and Uraraka sprinted into their building, where the bomb, a glowing prop, was located on the 5th floor. Izuku scanned the stairwell, aware that their opponents would come hard and fast. He instructed Uraraka to stay light and use her quirk to float obstacles. She complied, touching a crate and sending it hovering to block the halls. Footsteps thundered below as Bakugo's explosions echoed through the air. He blasted through a door, Kaminari at his side, electricity crackling around them. Bakugo shouted for Deku, declaring he was done playing. Izuku warned Uraraka to stay sharp as Kaminari unleashed a surge of electricity. Uraraka floated a table to block the blast, while Izuku dove behind a pillar, his training kicking in. He ducked and weaved, using the environment, pipes and debris, to evade Bakugo's relentless explosions. Bakugo shouted for Izuku to stand still, his palms blazing with energy. He threatened to blow Izuku's quirk to bits, but Izuku retorted that it wasn't fake and that he was there to win. Grabbing a metal rod, he swung it to deflect a spark, but Bakugo charged at him, aiming a fist at Izuku's chest. Bakugo's explosion grazed Izuku's jacket, knocking him back and causing pain to flare through him. Uraraka gasped, calling out to Midoriya and floating a chunk of wall to shield him, urging for a plan. Izuku's resolve hardened as the Omnitrix hummed. He acknowledged Bakuga's challenge, determined to give it his all. Twisting the dial, he selected Diamond Head's silhouette and slammed it down. Green light erupted around him, hardening his body into jagged emerald crystal, his arms sharpening into blades. When the light faded, he stood as Diamond Head, a towering figure among the rubble, the Omnitrix emblem gleaming on his chest. All Might watched in the observation tower, his heart racing. He whispered in disbelief, realizing that Izuku, who had once been quirkless, now wielded a power beyond any he had seen. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽𝐸 stumbled back, astonished by Izuku's transformation into a crystal giant. Bakuga, furious, declared he didn't care what Izuku had turned into, he wouldn't lose. He unleashed a massive explosion, shaking the building, but Diamond Head raised a crystalline shield, scattering the blast harmlessly. Diamond Head acknowledged Bakuga's strength but declared he wouldn't back down. He fired a volley of crystal shards, forcing Bakuga to dive for cover. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽𝐸 attempted to flank them with electricity, but 𝗧𝗓𝗏 floated a pipe, knocking him off balance. As Diamond Head charged at Bakuga, he swung a crystalline fist, but Bakuga dodged, his explosions relentless, each blast a refusal to yield. Bakuga shouted that he would crush Diamond Head, insisting he was not better than him. All Might watched, torn between awe and disbelief, wondering what Izuku was hiding. The battle raged on, Diamond Head's durability clashing with Bakuga's ferocity, while 𝗧𝗓𝗏's gravity tricks countered 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽𝐸's shocks. The bomb loomed, victory hanging in the balance, and Izuku's crystalline form stood firm, a testament to the hero he was becoming, though the cost of revealing his power cast a shadow he couldn't yet see. The mock city trembled, dust cascading from the area as Bakuga's explosions tore through the air, each blast a thunderclap of rage. The training ground, a labyrinth of shattered concrete and twisted steel, became a battlefield where Class 1's first combat exercise spiraled into something primal. Izuku in his Diamond Head form stood as a crystalline bulwark, his emerald facets glinting under flickering lights, the Omnitrix emblem on his chest pulsing faintly. Ochako fought beside him, her pink and black suit scuffed, using her quirk to keep debris aloft to shield them from Bakuga's relentless assault and 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽𝐸𝐸's crackling volleys. The bomb glowed tantalizingly close, but victory felt distant as Bakuga's fury consumed the space. Bakuga roared that Izuku was nothing, his eyes wild and sweating his ash-streaked face. His gauntlets glowed as he unleashed a barrage of explosions that scorched the walls, forcing Diamond Head to raise a crystalline shield, the impact jarring his sturdy frame. He urged 𝗧𝗓𝗏 to focus and get to the bomb while he held them off. Diamond Head fired a salvo of crystal shards, aiming to pin Bakuga, but the blonde dodged with feral agility, propelled by his explosions. 𝗧𝗓𝗏 sent a fallen beam floating toward 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽𝐸𝐸, who yelped and dove aside, his electricity fizzling against the obstacle. Diamond Head charged, slashing at Bakuga, who countered with a point-blank blast, the heat searing even through Diamond Head's durable form. The Omnitrix beeped ominously, its timer ticking down, a warning Izuku couldn't ignore. He realized he was running out of time. In the observation tower, All Might gripped the railing, his blue eyes wide with concern. The other battles had concluded, Tenya Ida and Momo Yaoyorozu outmaneuvering Eijiro Kirishima and Hantasiro with precise teamwork, Tsuyu Azui and Fumikage Tokoyami overwhelming Mina Ishido and Yuga Aoyama with stealth, Rikido Sato and Mezu Shoji overpowering Masahiro Ojiro and Koji Koda with brute force, and Shoto Todoroki and Toru Hagakure outwitting Kyokujiro and Minoru Mineta with icy precision. But Izuku's fight was different, raw, and personal. All Might's mind raced, haunted by his own words to the boy not long ago. You cannot become a hero. Yet here was Izuku, wielding a power that defied logic, facing a furious Bakuga. All Might murmured, his voice tight, questioning what Izuku had become. Bakuga unleashed a powerful explosion, shattering Diamond Head's shield into glittering fragments. He shouted, filled with rage, demanding to know if Izuku thought he was better than him. With a blast that sent Diamond Head skidding back, Bakuga declared his intent to end Izuku. The Omnitrix screeched, its green light flashing red, and Izuku's form dissolved in a burst of energy. He stumbled as he reverted to human, his dark green jacket torn, his combat boots scraping the floor. Pain lanced through his ribs from Bakugu's relentless attacks, but he stood firm, his jaw set, his green eyes burning with defiance. He declared that he wasn't done and that Bakugu didn't scare him. Uraraka cried out, floating a chunk of concrete to block Kaminari's next electric surge, urging Izuku to finish the fight as she noticed his injuries. Izuku shouted back, dodging as Bakugu lunged, his palms sparking. The Omnitrix was in cooldown, its red glow a stark reminder of his limits. He was quirkless now, just as Izuku, but his training at Dagobah Beach, months of hauling trash and building strength, kept him moving. He grabbed a broken pipe, swinging it to deflect Bakugu's fist, the impact jarring his arms. Bakugu snarled, blasting the pipe to fragments, taunting Izuku about being nothing without the Omnitrix. He seized Izuku's collar and slammed him against a wall, the concrete cracking behind him. Pain exploded in Izuku's shoulder, but he gritted his teeth, refusing to yield. Uraraka yelled for Bakugu to get off him, using her quirk to make a section of the floor weightless, causing Bakugu to stumble. She grabbed the bomb's capture band, her fingers brushing its surface, announcing that they had won. Bakugu roared in desperation, his eyes blazing with anger and betrayal. Ignoring the victory signal, he aimed his gauntlet at Izuku, who was slumped against the wall, a cut on his cheek. He declared that this wasn't over and that Izuku didn't get to win. All Might's voice crackled over the intercom, urgently commanding Bakugu to stand down, declaring the exercise complete. But Bakugu's rage was uncontainable as he screamed that Izuku was dead. Izuku's heart pounded with fear, not for pain, but for the realization that Bakugu wasn't fighting like a hero. This was personal, rooted in years of resentment. He shouted for Bakugu to stop, no longer calling him Kaken but addressing him by his surname, drawing a line in the sand. He insisted that this wasn't what heroes did. All Might moved to intervene, but before he could act, the Omnitrix flared, its red light shifting to a pulsating yellow. A distorted voice crackled through, urgent and unintelligible, as the device activated on its own. Green light consumed Izuku, but this transformation felt different, cold and invasive, as if something else guided it. His body dissolved into a spectral mist, chains of ethereal energy coiling around his limbs. A single glowing eye burned in a skull-like face, and when the light faded, he had transformed into Ghost Freak, a ghostly ectonurite. A chill gripped his soul, and his thoughts felt distant, clouded by a foreign presence whispering control. All Might froze, his breath catching as he realized that this was no ordinary quirk. He whispered in shock, questioning what Izuku had become. Ghost Freak's voice emerged, a hollow rasp not entirely Izuku's, as he phased through the wall, reappearing behind Bakugu. The blonde spun, his explosion blasting harmlessly through Ghost Freak's intangible form. Ghost Freak challenged Bakugu, ready for a fight. Uraraka shouted in fear, questioning what was happening and if that was really Izuku. Ghost Freak didn't respond, lunging and phasing through Bakugu's next blast. He seized Bakugu's arm, his touch icy, and hurled him against a pillar, the impact echoing. Bakugu gasped, his gauntlet sparking, but Ghost Freak's presence was overwhelming, a nightmare given shape. He declared that Bakugu didn't get to decide his worth anymore. Bakugu scrambled to his feet, firing erratically, demanding to know what Ghost Freak was. Ghost Freak vanished, reappearing above and pinning Bakugu's arms with his chains, forcing him to his knees. All Might's voice boomed, declaring that the battle was over and commanding Izuku to stand down. Ghost Freak's eye flickered, Izuku's will clawing through the haze. He released Bakugu, who slumped, breathing, his eyes wide with shock and fury. The Omnitrix beeped, now flashing red, and Ghost Freak let out a chilling sigh, warning that next time he wouldn't play nice. The light engulfed him, and Izuku reappeared, collapsing to his knees, his chest heaving, his mind reeling from the alien's influence. Uraraka rushed to his side, her hands hovering, asking if he was okay and expressing how scary that had been. Izuku gasped, clutching the Omnitrix, its red glow a stark warning, admitting that he didn't know what had happened. All Might approached, concern and disbelief etched on his face, stating that they needed to talk about the device immediately. Bakugu staggered to his feet, fists clenched, But Izuku's scarf lashed out, pinning him and declaring that he was done. Izuku warned Bakugo that if he lost control again, he would be expelled. Bakugo spat in frustration, wrenching free but storming off, his rage simmering. Uraraka helped Izuku stand, her touch steadying him as she softly acknowledged that he had won the fight, but that it hadn't just been him. Izuku admitted that something was wrong with the Omnitrix, the memory of Ghost Freak's cold grip lingering in his mind. He had won, but at what cost? The other teams gathered, their battles over, voices a mix of awe and unease. Kirishima exclaimed how intense the fight had been, calling Izuku a beast. Yaoyorozu observed the power but noted that it seemed unstable. Tsuyu expressed her fear, describing it as horror movie scary. All Might placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder, gently but firmly stating that he was dismissed for now, but that they weren't done discussing the extraordinary but dangerous power he possessed. Izuku nodded, his throat tight, following the class out, the Omnitrix's red glow weighing heavily on him. The victory felt hollow, overshadowed by the alien presence that had seized him. As they left the training ground, Uraraka's voice cut through Midoriya's thoughts. She complimented him on his performance, her smile a bit hesitant, but sincere. They were a team after all. He nodded in response, expressing his gratitude, but as he walked away, the earlier flash from the Omnitrix and its mysterious voice lingered in his mind, casting a shadow over his victory. What was controlling it? And what would it demand next? The UA campus was enveloped in the quiet of late afternoon, the sun setting low and casting golden rays across the polished halls. Izuku Midoriya's combat boots echoed as he approached Principal 𝐒𝐻𝐬𝐴's office, his dark green hero costume jacket slightly scuffed from the morning's intense training. The memory of the battle, Bakugo's fierce determination and the unsettling transformation of the Omnitrix into Ghost Freak clung to him like a shadow, his heart still racing from the alien's chilling presence. The summons to 𝐒𝐻𝐬𝐴's office felt ominous, and the Omnitrix, now red and silent on his wrist, provided no comfort. Its 10 aliens, Heat Blast, Four Arms, Diamond Head, Stinkfly, Wild Mutt, Ghost Freak, 𝗧𝗧𝗟𝗘, Ripjaws, Gray Matter, Upgrade, were a mystery growing deeper with each use, and the memory of his encounter with All Might's skeletal form a year ago resurfaced, reopening old wounds. He reached the office door, its polished wood imposing, and hesitated, his hand hovering. 𝐒𝐻𝐬 and All Might were inside, and he wondered what they wanted from him. He knocked, the sound sharp, and 𝐒𝐻𝐬's cheerful voice invited him in. The door swung open, revealing 𝐒𝐻𝐬's cozy sanctuary, filled with bookshelves and a large window framing the campus. 𝐒𝐻𝐬 sat at his desk, his bear-like muzzle curved in a welcoming smile, a chessboard and teapot already set on a nearby table. All Might stood beside him, his hero form towering and costume gleaming, yet his eyes scrutinized Izuku with an intensity that made his breath catch. The memory of All Might's earlier dismissal echoed in his mind, stinging anew. 𝐒𝐻𝐬 greeted Midoriya with enthusiasm, hopping from his chair and gesturing toward a seat. He expressed delight at Midoriya's presence, noting the excitement of his day. Izuku, easing into the chair, brushed his fingers against the Omnitrix's red faceplate, acknowledging 𝐒𝐻𝐬's words with a simple affirmation. All Might's gaze softened, yet curiosity lingered. He remarked on the bond between 𝐒𝐻𝐬 and Midoriya, noting how close they seemed for a first-year student. 𝐒𝐻𝐬 chuckled, his eyes sparkling with intrigue as he praised Midoriya's accomplishments, from topping the entrance exam to wielding an extraordinary device and facing challenges with heart. Before Izuku could respond, a faint hiss filled the room. All Might's form deflated, muscles shrinking, his iconic grin fading into a gaunt, skeletal face, his blonde hair drooping and eyes shadowed. Toshinori Yagi stood revealed, coughing softly, his suit hanging loosely. Izuku remained composed. He had seen this transformation before, that day under the overpass when his dreams had felt crushed. 𝐒𝐻𝐬 tilted his head, his smile unwavering. He noted that Midoriya must have known All Might's secret. Izuku nodded slowly, confirming that he had recognized Toshinori even in his hero form. Toshinori's eyes narrowed, a cough interrupting him as he leaned forward, surprised that Izuku had known and said nothing. Izuku explained that it wasn't his secret to share, just as his own quirk wasn't for others to question. 𝗍𝐸's ears perked up with interest as he gestured toward the Omnitrix, mentioning that All Might had concerns about it. Toshinori straightened, his skeletal frame rigid with determination. He pressed Midoriya for the origin of the device, recalling how a year ago, Izuku had stood before him quirkless, seeking to know if he could be a hero. Now, he was transforming into creatures Toshinori had never seen, excelling at UA, and overpowering Bakugo. It was unusual, almost impossible, and he demanded to know where it had come from. Izuku's heart raced, the weight of the Omnitrix heavy on his wrist. He hesitated, his mind racing with thoughts of the meteor and the aliens, knowing he couldn't reveal everything just yet. He replied that it was complicated. Toshinori pressed further, questioning whether Izuku couldn't or wouldn't share the truth, suggesting that he might not even know what the device was. 𝗍𝐸 intervened, asserting that Midoriya was a first year, not a suspect, and that he had shown remarkable potential, perhaps even surpassing Toshinori's own legacy. He insisted that pressuring Midoriya served no purpose. Toshinori's jaw tightened, his voice rising as he expressed concern over Midoriya's sudden power. He insisted they needed to understand what they were dealing with. Izuku clenched his fists, asserting that he was not reckless. He had trained for months, risking everything to reach this point. The device was his chance to be a hero and prove he was not nothing. He didn't know everything about it, but he was learning and using it to save people, emphasizing that was what truly mattered. 𝗍𝐸 smiled softly, approvingly, and praised Midoriya's heart as what made him a hero, regardless of the device. He then requested Toshinori to leave, wanting to speak with Midoriya alone. Toshinori hesitated, but 𝗍𝐸's tone was firm, and he reluctantly exited, casting Izuku a conflicted glance before the door clicked shut behind him. The room fell silent, save for the soft clink of 𝗍𝐸 pouring herbal tea into 2 cups, the soothing aroma of chamomile filling the air. He offered tea to Midoriya, sliding a cup across the table, noting it was his favorite blend to calm nerves after intense discussions. Izuku accepted the cup, feeling the warmth against his fingers. He sipped the tea, its gentle flavor easing the tension in his chest, and expressed regret for causing trouble. 𝗍𝐸 dismissed his concern, hopping onto his chair and gesturing toward the chessboard. He expressed his fascination with Midoriya as a puzzle and mentioned observing his combat training, praising his ferocity and control, even when the device acted unexpectedly. He suggested a rematch, recalling their last chess game as thrilling. Izuku managed a small smile, feeling the tension ease. He agreed to the rematch, determined to improve upon their last game. 𝗍𝐸 arranged the pieces, declaring that Izuku would play as white and it was his move. The game began, the board becoming a battlefield of strategy and wit. Izuku opened with a pawn, his mind sharpened by gray matter's lingering clarity, each move calculated yet bold. 𝗍𝐸 countered with a knight, his plays deceptively playful but sharp. He complimented Midoriya on his improvement, noting his remarkable focus, especially after the day's events. Izuku thanked him, sliding his rook to challenge 𝗍𝐸's position, expressing his longing to be ready for whatever UA had in store for him. 𝗍𝐸 captured a pawn with a sly grin, affirming Izuku's resolve against Bakugo and his defiance with all might as inspiring. But tell me, how did it feel, that moment with, what did you call it? Ghost Freak? Izuku's hand paused, his knight hovering. The memory of Ghost Freak's cold, alien presence sent a shiver through him. It was scary, he admitted, his voice low. He hadn't chosen that transformation. It just happened, as if the Omnitrix had a mind of its own. He felt not himself. 𝗍𝐸's eyes softened as his pawn advanced. It was fascinating, he said. A device with autonomy was a rare thing. But Izuku fought through it, reclaimed control. That was the mark of a true hero. Izuku moved his queen, his heart steadying. He wanted to understand it. He needed to if he was going to keep using it safely. And he would, 𝗍𝐸 assured him, his bishop pinning Izuku's knight. But he shouldn't let it define him. He was more than that device, Midoriya. By the way, Izuku's eyes flicked to the board, his mind racing. He moved his king, countering with a bold pawn push, forcing 𝗍𝐸's bishop to retreat. The game stretched on, pieces falling, strategies unfolding in a dance of intellect and instinct. Izuku's focus was unshaken, each move a testament to his resolve, until the board reached a delicate stalemate, neither side yielding, a tie forged in mutual respect. "Well played," Nizu exclaimed, clapping his paws, his smile wide. "A stalemate. You've grown sharper, Midoriya. I dare say you nearly had me." Izuku exhaled, a grin breaking through his tension. He would take a tie against Nizu, he said. "It was an honor." "The honor is mine," Nizu replied, sipping his tea. "You're a student with limitless potential, Midoriya. Keep pushing, keep questioning. UA is your crucible, and I'm eager to see how you shape it." Izuku stood, bowing deeply, his heart alight with determination. "Thank you, Principal Nizu," he said. "I won't let you down." As he left the office, the Omnitrix-a's red glow lingered on his wrist, a silent enigma. All Might's questions, Ghost Freak's haunting presence, and Nizu's unwavering faith swirled in his mind. The path to heroism was fraught with secrets and trials, and Izuku knew the next step would demand everything he had, and more. The night draped 𝗧𝗜𝗧𝗟𝗘 in a velvet hush. The city's hum softened to a murmur beyond Izuku Midoriya's bedroom window. Moonlight spilled across his desk, illuminating a sprawl of notebooks filled with meticulous diagrams of the Omnitrix-a's 10 aliens, Heat Blast's fiery anatomy, Forearm's muscular structure, Diamond Head's crystalline lattice, Stinkfly's wing mechanics, Wildmutt's sensory nodes, Ghost Freak's ethereal chains, XR8's aerodynamic frame, Ripjaw's aquatic adaptations, Gray Matter's neural pathways, Upgrade's biomechanical circuits. Izuku, in a worn green tank top and black sweatpants, moved through a series of push-ups on his floor, his breath steady despite the burn in his arms. The Omnitrix glowed green on his wrist, its light a beacon in the dim room, a constant reminder of the power he wielded and the limits he faced without it. 37, he grunted, pushing up, his muscles taut. He wasn't strong enough like this. Not without transforming. He dropped to a plank, holding the position, sweat beading on his brow. If he wanted to keep up with Bakugo Ida, Todoroki, he needed to be smarter, not just stronger. His eyes flicked to the Omnitrix, its emerald glow steady, inviting. "You're my edge, but I can't rely on you alone." He rose, wiping his forehead, and crossed to his desk, where his hero notebook lay open. Pages detailed the Omnitrix-a's functions, cross-referenced with Gray Matter's analytical insights from months of study. 10 aliens, he murmured, tracing a sketch of XLR8's sleek form. But what if there's more? What if he could unlock others? The thought sparked excitement, but also dread. Tampering with the Omnitrix, probing its alien technology, could be catastrophic. If it malfunctioned, or worse, self-destructed? He shuddered, imagining the fallout, not just for him but for everyone around him. He couldn't risk that. Not now. He sat, flipping through notes, his mind racing. Gray Matter's intelligence helped him map its patterns, he said to the Omnitrix, as if it could hear. "You're not just a tool, you're a system, a database of alien DNA. But who made you? Why him?" The questions gnawed at him, intensified by the memory of Ghost Freak's unbidden transformation, the chilling sense of losing control. He needed answers, but he couldn't push too far. A sudden beep shattered the silence, the Omnitrix's green light flashing to a pulsing yellow. Izuku froze, his heart lurching as static crackled, a distorted voice breaking through. "User wearing the Omnitrix, please respond." The words were fragmented, like a signal struggling across vast distances. Izuku's breath hitched, his fingers hovering over the device. "What?" he whispered, leaning closer. The voice sharpened, urgent and clear. "User wearing my Omnitrix, please respond." He stared, his pulse hammering. "Who is this?" he said, his voice trembling but firm, pressing the Omnitrix's faceplate. "I'm Izuku Midoriya." "Who are you?" The static cleared, and a voice, calm, precise, tinged with an otherworldly cadence, answered. "I am the creator of the Omnitrix. My name is 𝗧𝗜𝗧𝗟𝗘 of the Galvan." Izuku's eyes widened, his chair creaking as he leaned back. "The creator," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You made this? The Omnitrix?" Indeed, 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 replied, the yellow glow pulsing in rhythm with his words. A device designed to foster understanding across species, to preserve and utilize the DNA of countless worlds. I've been tracking its signal since it activated on your planet. You, Izuku Midoriya, are its current wielder. Izuku's mind spun, questions colliding. Why me? He asked, his voice raw with urgency. I found it in a meteor, it just crashed near me. Was that an accident? Nothing about the Omnitrix is accidental, 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 said, his tone sharp but not unkind. Its arrival was unexpected, but it chose you. Or rather, you proved worthy. Your actions, saving others, facing danger, demonstrate a spirit aligned with its purpose. But it's dangerous, Izuku said, his voice rising. Ghost Freak took over during training. I didn't choose that transformation, it just happened. What if I lose control again? The Omnitrix flickered, 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽's voice softening. The Omnitrix is complex, young human. Its failsafes are not perfect, especially when wielded by one untrained. Ghost Freak's 𝗧𝗜𝗧𝗟𝗘 carries a will of its own. You must MSTR it, or it will MSTR you. Izuku's fists clenched, his resolve hardening. I'm trying, he said. I've trained for months, studied every alien, pushed my body to keep up. But I'm still just me. Without the Omnitrix, I'm weak. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽's voice held a hint of amusement. You speak as if strength is all that matters. The Omnitrix amplifies, but your choices, your courage, your intellect, define its power. You are not weak, Izuku Midoriya. You are adaptable. Izuku swallowed, his eyes stinging. I want to be a hero, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Like All Might. But people like him, like my teachers, they don't trust the Omnitrix. They think it's dangerous, that I'm dangerous. Let them doubt, 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 said, his tone firm. The Omnitrix is a tool of peace, not destruction, but only in the right hands. Prove them wrong through your actions as you have already begun. Izuku asked, leaning forward, his voice urgent. You're the creator. Can you teach me? Show me how to control it, unlock its secrets. The Omnitrix beeped, the yellow light flickering. Time and distance limit this connection, 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 said, his voice fading slightly. But I will guide you when I can. For now, trust your instincts. The Omnitrix responds to your will. Strengthen that will, and it will obey. Izuku began to respond, but the Omnitrix flashed green, cutting off the signal and leaving him in silence. He stared at the device, its familiar glow restored, his heart racing with the weight of 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽's words. He whispered to himself, acknowledging the Creator's presence, you're out there, somewhere, watching me. He stood and began pacing his room, his exercises forgotten. Testing the name, he said, 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽. Galvan. That's gray matter species, isn't it? You built this for peace. He glanced at his notebook, filled with theories. More aliens, maybe. But if I tamper with it, he shook his head, knowing the risk was too great. I need to focus on what I have. 10 aliens, my training, my mind. Sitting again, his gaze drifted to his All Might poster, the hero's grin contrasting sharply with the skeletal figure he had seen earlier. All Might doesn't trust me, he murmured. 𝐒𝐻𝐵𝐽 believes in me, but even he's curious. And Bakugo, he clenched his fists, the memory of Ghost Freak's chilling control still fresh in his mind. I won't let that happen again. I'll MSTR you, Omnitrix. I have to. As night deepened, the city's hum became a distant lullaby. Izuku opened his notebook, pen in hand, sketching Ghost Freak's form and noting its strengths, intangibility, invisibility, and its dangers. You're not in charge, he declared to the Omnitrix, his voice firm. I am. And I'll prove it, to 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽, to All Might, to everyone. The Omnitrix glowed silently, a cosmic enigma tied to his destiny. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽's voice lingered, a spark of hope and fear, and Izuku understood that the path to heroism had just grown more complex, a journey where his will would be tested against forces beyond his world. The morning sun blazed over UA High, but the gates swarmed with reporters, cameras flashing like vultures. News of All Might joining the faculty had ignited a media frenzy, with vans clogging the streets as journalists clamored for scoops. Izuku Midoriya, in his UA uniform, pushed through the throng, his backpack slung tight, the Omnitrix hidden under his sleeve. Microphones were moved toward him, voices overlapping in a cacophony. One reporter shouted, demanding to know if he was a student and what All Might would be teaching. Izuku ducked, his heart racing. He quickly thought of something to say, and in desperation, blurted out, "General Studies." The reporters scoffed, pulling back. "General Studies? Boring, move on, he's nobody." One sneered, turning to flashier targets. The dismissal stung, but Izuku bolted inside as the infamous UA barrier, a high-tech security gate humming with energy, sealed behind him. Aizawa watched from afar, muttering under his breath about the reporters' futile attempts to breach the gate. In Class 1A, the room buzzed with post-combat energy. Aizawa slouched at the podium, his eyes scanning printed results. "I've seen your battle trial assessments," he said, his voice laced with dry critique that silenced most of the students. "Some of you showed promise. Midoriya and 𝗧𝗧𝗟𝗘, solid teamwork, smart use of the environment, and that device. Impressive restraint." Izuku flushed, sinking lower in his seat as Ochako beamed beside him. "But Bakugo," Aizawa continued, gaze sharpening, "your aggression was sloppy. Victory doesn't mean endangering teammates or ignoring objectives. Disappointing. Control it, or you're out." Bakugo slammed his desk in frustration, claiming that Izuku had cheated with his abilities. "Save it," Aizawa snapped, his support item floating along with his hair. "You're on very thin ice, so you better start getting your act together." He then announced something crucial for them to do. As soon as they heard this, the students wondered if it was another test. "You must pick a class president. Votes now." No whining. Excitement erupted. "Class rep, I'm in." Kirishima pumped a fist. "Gonna lead like a man." "Orderly elections," Ida declared, emphasizing the importance of democracy. Ballots flew, and results were tallied. Izuku Midoriya was elected class president, and Momo Yaoyorozu became vice. Izuku stared at the board, his stomach churning. "Me? But I don't know if I can." Momo approached him, her posture poised. "You earned it, Midoriya. I'll support you as vice. We'll handle this together." Izuku exhaled, reassured. "Thanks, Yaoyorozu. I appreciate it." Lunchtime filled the cafeteria with chatter and clinking trays. Izuku, Ochako, and Tenya claimed a table, their bento boxes steaming. "Class president," Ochako mused, poking her rice. "You'll be great, Midoriya. But you seem unsure." "I am," Izuku admitted, chopsticks pausing. "Leading everyone. What if I mess up?" "You won't," Tenya said firmly, adjusting his glasses. "Your exam performance, that calm under fire, you've got the makings of a fine leader. Trust your instincts, they've served you well." Izuku smiled faintly, warmth spreading within him. "Thanks, Ida. That means a lot." Ochako giggled at Tenya's formality, teasing him about being like a robot. Tenya straightened, explaining his prestigious family background, which demanded DSPLN. Izuku's eyes lit up, nerd mode activating as he asked about the Ida family's legacy. Suddenly, a piercing siren wailed, red lights flashing. Chaos erupted, students shoved, trays clattered, and screams echoed. "Intruder! Evacuate!" Izuku and Tenya bolted to a window, spotting the media horde. "It's just reporters," Izuku said. "The barrier glitched." Tenya nodded, noting that panic was spreading. Izuku had a plan, and as he stepped into the chaos, his eyes found 𝗧𝗧𝗟𝗃. "Midoriya!" Ochako called as she spotted him. "𝗧𝗧𝗟𝗃, float me," Izuku urged, getting close enough for her to touch him. Zero gravity kicked in, and he drifted upward, scrambling with the Omnitrix. "Come on, Omnitrix, give me something good. Anything." Heart pounding, he slammed the dial randomly. A green light flared, and his body transformed into a large, insectoid form, stinkfly, with iridescent wings and a stinger tail. "Everyone, no need to panic." Stinkfly buzzed, hovering above the courtyard. "It's just the media at the gates. UA students, calm down and form orderly lines. Stop acting recklessly and evacuate properly." The crowd froze, then complied, forming lines amid murmurs. "Whoa, that's Midoriya," Kirishima whispered. "Class rep vibes." Stinkfly descended, tapping his emblem. With a green flash, he returned to his human form, sighing in relief. That worked. Back in Class 1A, Izuku and Momo stood in front. "Given today," Izuku said, "maybe we should do a re-vote for president." As ballots were recounted, Izuku's vote soared, making his eyes widen. "You calmed the chaos," Ida declared. "You deserve this." Izuku rubbed his neck, feeling a mix of gratitude and anxiety. "Thanks. I'll try." In the faculty lounge, screens flickered, hinting at the unfolding events. The barrier disintegrated, and Aizawa noted grimly that someone had breached it. Nisa's eyes narrowed as he remarked that it was not reporters but an element of evil orchestrating this, possibly a declaration of war. In an empty classroom, Izuku and Momo were poring over lists, organizing their duties. Izuku scribbled, contemplating whether to assign roles like secretary or treasurer. Momo reassured him that they would manage, but she was curious about his wrist device. Izuku hesitated before explaining that it temporarily altered his DNA, allowing transformations without any pain and keeping him stable. Momo's eyes widened in fascination as she asked if it involved molecular reconfiguration. Izuku excitedly confirmed this and praised her creation quirk, marveling at her ability to visualize atomic structures. Momo blushed, appreciating his insight, and suggested assigning Kirishima for morale. As they continued their discussions, the shadow of the breach loomed over them, but Izuku's resolve hardened, his leadership forged in crisis. As the clock ticked to 12:50 p.m. on Wednesday, Class 1A gathered in UA's Heroics Lecture Hall, the air thick with anticipation. The room buzzed with latent energy, mirroring the students' excitement. Izuku sat among his peers, his dark green hero costume jacket slightly rumpled and his black combat boots scuffed from morning drills. The Omnitrix glowed green on his wrist, a quiet pulse beneath his sleeve, while sweat beaded on his forehead, a sign of the pressure he felt as class president. Late-night meetings with Momo had drained his energy, yet his resolve burned brighter than ever. Aizawa stood at the front, his scarf coiled like a serpent as he scanned the class. He announced that today's lesson would focus on foundational rescue skills, supervised by a three-man team, himself, All Might, and another. Their task was the trial of rescue, which involved saving lives in disaster scenarios such as floods and fires. He warned them not to get cocky, emphasizing that this was not a game. The class erupted in cheers, with Eijiro Kirishima excitedly declaring that rescue was his specialty and that he would save everyone in a manly style. Mina Ashido bounced with enthusiasm, ready to melt any obstacle in their way. Aizawa's glare silenced them, reminding them that their costumes might not be suitable for rescue and that they needed to choose wisely. He instructed them to prepare for a bus ride to a remote training area. In the locker room, Izuku adjusted his jacket, feeling exhaustion tug at his limbs as he joined his classmates. Ochako Uraraka approached him, concern etched on her face as she remarked that he looked like he was about to collapse. He forced a smile and assured her that he was fine, just busy with class president duties. She frowned, unconvinced, warning him not to overdo it. Before he could respond, Momo Yaoyorozu tapped him on the shoulder, her costume impeccable as she reminded him not to overdo it. She offered to handle some meetings next time, insisting that he wasn't a one-man army. Izuku gave a tired salute, his grin sheepish as he acknowledged her concern. Momo chuckled, her sternness softening as she insisted he get some rest that night. Katsuki Bakugu across the room glared at them, but Izuku chose to focus on the task ahead. Outside, Tenya Ida blew a whistle, shouting for everyone to form two orderly lines by their student numbers for efficient boarding. Izuku snatched the whistle and gave Ida a weary look, suggesting that everyone just get on the bus and sit wherever they liked. Ida's jaw dropped in disbelief, but Izuku reassured him that they would be fine. The bus ride was chaotic, with seats filled randomly while Ida muttered about suboptimal arrangements. Izuku laughed, feeling his exhaustion fade as he encouraged Ida to loosen up. A tap on his shoulder turned him to 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴, who asked about the function of his watch, curious about his ability to transform. Before he could answer, Kirishima leaned over, eager to know how he had so many quirks. Shoto Todoroki's curiosity was evident, even as he maintained his icy demeanor. Izuku forced a smile, explaining that the device allowed him to transform by altering his DNA quickly and painlessly. Tsuyu nodded thoughtfully, while Kaminari excitedly declared him a shapeshifter superhero. Aizawa's voice cut through the chatter, announcing their arrival at the unforeseen simulation joint USJ, a massive dome housing various disaster scenarios. Space Hero 13 welcomed them, emphasizing that today's lesson was about using their quirks to save lives, not just to fight. As 13 spoke, Izuku felt a swell of purpose in his chest. This was what heroes did. But then, a black portal swirled open at the dome's center, and villains began pouring through, grimy thugs and masked figures whose malice chilled the air. Kirishima tensed, questioning if this was part of the training. Aizawa's expression turned serious as he ordered 13 to protect the students and instructed everyone to huddle together. A villain with hands plastered across his body taunted Aizawa, revealing that they had come to crush All Might and were willing to harm students to draw him out. The atmosphere turned tense, fear gripping the class. Momo clutched her staff, Ida's engines hummed, and Bakuga's palms sparked with energy. Izuku's gaze locked onto Aizawa, who donned his goggles, ready to erase quirks. The Omnitrix pulsed, urging action, but doubt clawed at Izuku. This was real and lives were at stake. Ochako whispered to him, asking what they should do. He instructed everyone to stay close as he stepped toward Aizawa, knowing this was the moment that mattered. Aizawa charged, using his scarf to incapacitate the villains while nullifying their quirks. 13 ushered the students back, but the villain's words echoed in Izuku's mind, a declaration of war. His hand hovered over the Omnitrix, his heart pounding with the realization that this moment would define him, for better or worse.